Some roads don't care if you're prepared. A woman followed into darkness, a father who noticed too late, and a night shift that revealed what hunts between mile markers. 3 people, 3 highways, 3 moments where turning around wasn't an option anymore. This happened in November 2023, about 14 months ago. I was 29 and working as a pharmaceutical courier for a regional medical supplier based out of Reno. The job paid well because nobody else wanted to do the overnight runs through Nevada's back country, delivering time-sensitive medications to rural clinics that couldn't wait for standard shipping. That particular night, I was hauling temperature-controlled insulin and chemotherapy drugs from Reno to Ely, which meant taking US 50, the so-called loneliest road in America. If you've never driven it, the name isn't marketing. It's 250 miles of absolute nothingness, where you might see another vehicle every hour if you're lucky. I left around 11 p.m., which was standard for these runs. The road was empty, just my headlights cutting through the darkness, and the occasional reflective eyes of deer watching from the sagebrush. I had my usual setup, coffee in the cup holder, true crime podcast playing, and my company-issued dash cam recording everything for insurance purposes. Around 2:30 a.m., somewhere past Austin, I noticed headlights behind me. Not unusual, but they were maintaining this exact distance, maybe a quarter-mile back. I sped up slightly. They sped up. I slowed down. They slowed down. My first thought was highway patrol, maybe checking my speed, but they never pulled closer or turned on any lights. Just maintained that same distance, mile after mile. After about 20 minutes of this, I started getting uncomfortable. The thing about US 50 is there are virtually no turnoffs, no side roads, no escape routes, just straight highway cutting through federal land and mountain passes. Whoever was back there had been following me for at least 30 miles through the most isolated stretch of road in America. I tried telling myself I was being paranoid. Maybe they were just another courier headed to the same general area, driving at a similar speed, but something felt wrong. The way they never got closer, never passed me, never fell back far enough to disappear, like they were hurting me. Then my phone rang. The caller ID showed a Nevada number I didn't recognize. I answered it on speaker. A woman's voice, shaky and urgent. "Are you the white cargo van heading east on 50? My blood went cold. Who is this?" "Listen to me very carefully," she said. "Do not stop. Do not slow down. There's a vehicle behind you that's been flagged by highway patrol. We received a call about 30 minutes ago from a clinic in Eureka. Someone broke into their parking lot and stole a vehicle matching the description of the one following you." I looked in my rearview mirror. The headlights were still there, same distance, same speed. "What kind of vehicle?" I asked, though I already knew the answer was going to be bad. "A patient transport van. The kind with medical restraints in the back." The clinic director reported that the van was taken along with several boxes of controlled substances and surgical equipment. Her voice dropped lower. "The person who took it also accessed their patient files. They know the route that medical couriers use." My hands were sweating on the steering wheel. "Where's the nearest town?" "Eureka is 40 miles ahead, but here's the problem. There's construction between you and town. They've got the highway narrowed to 1 lane through a canyon pass. If they're planning to stop you, that's where they'll do it." I felt sick. What do you want me to do? State police are en route from Ely, but they're at least 30 minutes out. I need you to maintain your current speed and do not engage with this vehicle under any circumstances. If they try to get you to pull over, do not stop. Do you have any way to defend yourself? No, I said. We're not allowed to carry weapons. Company policy. There was a long pause. Okay, stay on the line with me. What's your name? Marcus. Marcus, I'm Deputy Hernandez with Eureka County Sheriff. I'm going to stay on the phone with you until our units reach you. Can you see the vehicle clearly? I adjusted my mirror. In the distance, I could make out the boxy shape of a van. White, just like she'd said. No front license plate that I could see? Yeah, I see it. Good. Now, you mentioned you have a dash cam. Is it recording right now? Yes, front and rear facing. Perfect. Keep it running. Now listen, when you hit that construction zone, you need to make a choice. Either you maintain speed through the work zone, which means going through at probably 60 in a 35 zone, or you slow down and risk them pulling alongside you. What's your cargo? Medical supplies, insulin, and chemo drugs. Are they secured? Yeah, locked climate-controlled unit in the back. Why? Because if things go bad, you abandon that van and you run. Do you understand me? Those supplies can be replaced. You cannot. My mouth was dry. The highway ahead was completely dark, except for my headlights. No other traffic, no witnesses. Just me and whoever was in that van behind me. Then I saw the orange construction signs. I see the work zone, I said. What's the posted speed? 35, single lane. How long is the zone? Sign says 3 miles. Deputy Hernandez was quiet for a moment. Okay, here's what you're going to do. When you enter that construction zone, I want you to accelerate to 70. Don't slow down until you're through. That's reckless driving. I could lose my license. My job. Marcus, that van has medical restraints and surgical equipment in it. Do you understand what I'm telling you? This isn't about your job anymore. Something in her voice made me realize she wasn't just worried about stolen property. She was worried about what someone would do with restraints and surgical tools in the middle of nowhere at 3 a.m. I hit the construction zone at 60 and pushed the accelerator. 70, 75. Van behind me immediately sped up too, closing the distance. The construction barriers flew past in a blur. I was white-knuckling the steering wheel, praying I wouldn't hit loose gravel or blown tire debris. The van was maybe 100 feet behind me now, its headlights filling my entire rear window. Then something happened I didn't expect. A second set of headlights appeared in my side mirror. A large pickup truck had come out of nowhere, accelerating hard through the construction zone behind the van. It pulled right up on the van's bumper and started flashing its high beams. There's another vehicle, I said into the phone. Black Dodge Ram? I think so. That's our undercover unit. He was running dark, waiting to see what the van would do. Stay on course, Marcus. You're doing great. The pickup stayed on the van's tail through the entire construction zone, not giving them any room to make a move. When we finally cleared the barriers and hit open road again, I saw red and blue lights in the distance ahead. 3 state police cruisers had set up a rolling roadblock. I slowed and pulled to the shoulder as instructed. Behind me, the pickup had forced the van to stop. Officers were already moving toward it with weapons drawn. Deputy Hernandez stayed on the phone with me for another 40 minutes while they processed the scene. She told me to stay in my van, keep the doors locked, and not look at what they were doing behind me. I couldn't help it, though. In my side mirror, I watched them pull two people out of the van. A man and a woman, both cuffed. Then I saw the officers open the back doors of the van and stand there for a long moment before one of them walked away and threw up on the side of the road. Later, after I'd given my statement and they'd cleared me to continue, one of the state troopers came over to my window. He was an older guy, probably close to retirement. "You're lucky," he said. "We've been tracking these two for 6 weeks. 4 couriers went missing on rural highways across Nevada and Utah, all of them driving alone at night, all of them carrying valuable cargo. What happened to them?" I asked, though part of me didn't want to know. He just shook his head. "Don't stop on Use 50 after dark anymore. Not for anything. You understand?" I understood. The company offered me a $5,000 bonus to stay on and keep running night routes. I took the bonus and quit 2 days later. I'm working as a pharmacy tech now, regular hours, surrounded by people and lights and security cameras. Sometimes I still dream about those headlights in my mirror, maintaining that perfect distance, waiting for the right moment. And I think about how many miles of dark highway there are in this country where nobody would hear you scream. This happened in August 2021. My daughter Emma had just turned 16, and we were driving back from her summer volleyball camp in Minnesota to our home in Wisconsin. The camp was outside Duluth, and the drive back was supposed to take about 4 hours, most of it along I-35, and then cutting over on some state highways. We left around 7 p.m. because Emma wanted to beat the sunset. She'd always been nervous about driving at night, which I thought was smart for a new driver. The plan was simple. I'd let her drive the first 2 hours while there was still daylight, then I'd take over for the darker stretch into Wisconsin. About an hour into the drive, somewhere south of Moose Lake, Emma noticed a dark blue sedan in her rearview mirror. "Mom, is that car following us?" I turned to look. The sedan was maybe 3 car lengths back, cruising at the same speed we were. "Honey, we're on a highway. Lots of cars travel the same direction." "No, but it's been there for like 20 minutes. Every time I speed up or slow down, it does the same thing." I watched the car for a few minutes. She was right. When Emma moved to the right lane, the sedan moved right. When she went left, it went left, always maintaining the same distance. "Probably just coincidence," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "Focus on your driving." But I was watching that sedan carefully now. I couldn't see the driver through the tinted windows, just a vague silhouette. 20 more minutes passed. The sedan stayed locked in position behind us. Emma's hands were getting tense on the wheel. "Mom, I don't like this." "It's okay, baby, just keep driving." "We'll be fine." Then my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Nice daughter you have. Would be a shame if something happened to her." My blood turned to ice. I didn't say anything to Emma, just quickly texted back, "Who is this?" The response came immediately. "Check your rear view." The sedan flashed its high beams 3 times. Whoever was driving that car was texting me while following us. They knew we could see them. They wanted us to know they were there. I tried to keep my voice calm. "Emma, I need you to take the next exit." "What? Why?" "Just do it, please." She signaled and moved toward the exit ramp. The sedan followed. My heart was pounding so hard I thought Emma might hear it. The exit led to a 2-lane county road with nothing but farmland on either side. No houses, no gas stations, just cornfields stretching to the horizon in the fading light. "Mom, there's nothing out here." "Why did you make me exit?" Another text. "Wrong choice. Very wrong choice. Emma, I need you to speed up. Right now. But the speed limit, speed up." She hit the gas and our Subaru jumped forward to 70. The sedan accelerated too, easily keeping pace. Then it started to pull alongside us. I could see the driver now, a man in his 40s wearing a black baseball cap. He was holding up his phone, pointing it at Emma, taking pictures or video. He was smiling. "Oh my God," Emma whispered. "Oh my God, Mom, what do we do?" "Do not look at him. Eyes on the road. We're going to outrun him." "I can't outrun him. He's right there." The sedan pulled fully alongside us, matching our speed exactly. The man was making gestures now, pointing at Emma, then pointing to the side of the road. He wanted us to pull over. My phone buzzed again. "Pull over, or I'll make you pull over." I grabbed Emma's phone from the cup holder and called 911. The operator answered, but the signal was breaking up. We were too far from the towers. "This is 911. Can you location?" "County Road 38, south of." The line went dead. The sedan suddenly swerved into our lane, forcing Emma to slam on the brakes. We skidded, but she kept control. The sedan slowed too, boxing us in at about 40 miles per hour. What do I do? Emma was crying now. Then I saw something ahead. A small house set back from the road, lights on in the windows, a truck parked in the driveway. When I say go, you pull into that driveway as fast as you can. Don't slow down until we're parked, you understand? She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Go. Emma whipped the wheel right and we flew off the road into the gravel driveway, spraying rocks everywhere. She slammed the brakes and we skidded to a stop inches from the garage door. The sedan had stopped on the road, engine idling. I grabbed Emma and pulled her out of the car. We ran to the front door and I pounded on it with both fists. Help, please help us. The door opened and a woman in her 60s stood there, confused and alarmed. What in the... Someone's following us. Please, we need help. She looked past us to the sedan sitting on the road. Her expression changed instantly. She pulled us inside and locked the door. "Get away from the windows," she said, and grabbed a shotgun from beside the door. She called 911 from her landline while keeping the gun trained on the door. I held Emma while she sobbed into my shoulder. Through the window, I could see the sedan still sitting there. 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Just sitting there, engine running. Finally, we heard sirens. The sedan's brake lights came on, and it slowly drove away before the police arrived. The state troopers took our statement. They ran our plates and found that our car had been flagged in a database. The man in the sedan had photographed our license plate at a gas station 2 hours earlier when we'd stopped for snacks. He'd posted it to some kind of online forum where people track and harass female drivers. The trooper told us they'd been dealing with a spike in coordinated stalking incidents on rural highways. Groups of men who follow women and teenage girls, terrifying them, sometimes for hours, documenting it and sharing it online for entertainment. They never caught the man in the sedan. The plates were stolen, and he'd disabled his vehicle before ditching it 20 miles away. The woman who helped us, whose name was Margaret, insisted we stay the night. She made us soup and let Emma sleep in her granddaughter's old room. She sat up with me until 3 a.m., both of us drinking coffee, the shotgun on the table between us. "I have a daughter, too," Margaret said, "and granddaughters. This world is getting meaner." We drove home the next morning, both of us exhausted. I drove the whole way. Emma hasn't driven on a highway since. She's 19 now, in college, and she takes Uber everywhere. She won't even get in a car with a male driver. I see therapists now, both of us. Emma has nightmares about the man's smile, about him pointing his phone at her, about what would have happened if we hadn't seen Margaret's house. The worst part? The police told us he probably wasn't planning to physically harm us. He was just terrorizing us for fun, for content to share online with other men who do the same thing. That somehow makes it worse. The fact that our terror was entertainment. I still get texts, sometimes from unknown numbers. Just random messages. "Saw you at the grocery store. Nice car. Tell Emma I said hi. I've changed our numbers 3 times. It doesn't matter. They always find us again. We don't take road trips anymore." This happened last year in March 2024. I was 31 and working night security for a private shipping company that moved high-value electronics between distribution centers. The job was mostly driving, which I preferred. Less dealing with people, more time alone with my audiobooks and thoughts. That night I was transporting a load of server components from Sacramento to Redding, California. The route took me north on I-5, which is usually pretty straightforward. 6 lanes most of the way, decent traffic even at night, well-lit rest stops every 40 miles. I left Sacramento around 10 p.m. The van I drove was a white Ford Transit. No windows in the back, company logo on the sides. All the cargo was locked in the rear behind a reinforced steel partition. Around midnight, somewhere past Red Bluff, I noticed a motorcycle pacing me in the right lane. Not unusual. I-5 is a major route for bikers heading to Oregon. But after about 10 minutes, I realized it was maintaining the exact same speed, about 5 feet off my passenger door. I slowed down. The motorcycle slowed down. I sped up. It sped up. I switched lanes. It switched lanes. The rider was wearing all black gear with a dark helmet. No identifying markings. I couldn't tell if it was a man or woman. They just stayed locked in that position off my passenger side, matching my every move. After about 20 minutes of this, the motorcycle suddenly accelerated and cut in front of me, then slowed down, forcing me to brake. Then it dropped back alongside me again. They were playing with me. I tried to get a better look at the rider, but the helmet visor was too dark. They turned their head toward me and made a gesture. A phone. They were pantomiming holding up a phone. Then my phone rang. I looked at the caller ID, unknown number. I answered on Bluetooth. "Do you know what you're carrying?" A male voice, mid-30s maybe, casual and calm. "Excuse me? In the back of your van? Do you know what it really is?" I glanced in my rear view. The motorcycle was still right there. "Who is this?" "Someone who's going to save your life if you listen very carefully. Pull over at the next rest stop. We need to talk." "I'm not pulling over." "Yes, you are. Because in exactly 4 minutes, 3 vehicles are going to box you in and force you off the road. And when they do, they're going to execute you and take your cargo. Or you can pull over now, talk to me, and maybe we can both survive the next half hour." My hands were shaking on the wheel. If this is some kind of joke, does it feel like a joke? Look in your rearview mirror. See the black SUV about a quarter-mile back? I looked. There was a black SUV, 3 cars behind me. That's vehicle 1. Now check your driver's side mirror. See the silver pickup that just passed you? A silver pickup was pulling ahead in the left lane. That's vehicle 2. And vehicle 3 is about 2 miles ahead, waiting at the exit for the rest stop. They're going to coordinate and pin you in. You have 3 minutes to decide if you want my help or theirs. Why should I trust you? Because I'm the only person who called to warn you. Now pull over. Rest stop in 2 miles. I'll meet you at the far end of the lot. And David, come alone." The line went dead. He knew my name. My heart was racing. This could be a setup, a robbery, a dozen different terrible scenarios. But the alternative was ignoring the warning and hoping he was lying. I took the rest stop exit. The lot was mostly empty. A few semi-trucks parked in the back, one RV near the restrooms. I pulled into a space at the far end away from the lights and killed the engine. The motorcycle pulled in 30 seconds later and parked several spaces away. The rider got off, removed the helmet, and started walking toward my van. It was a woman. Short, dark hair, maybe 40 years old, wearing tactical gear under a leather jacket. She tapped on my window. "Pop the back. I need to see what you're carrying. Not until you tell me what's going on." She looked over her shoulder at the rest stop entrance, then back at me. "You were supposed to be delivering server components, right? Routine transfer, nothing special?" "Yeah, so?" "So your company didn't pack that cargo. Someone else did. Someone who wanted those components to reach a specific buyer in Reading who's going to use them to finalize a very illegal cryptocurrency mining operation that's been laundering money for 3 different criminal organizations." I stared at her. "Who are you?" "FBI, Cybercrime Division. We've been tracking this shipment for 6 weeks. The original driver was supposed to be compromised. He was going to deliver the components and look the other way, but he got sick last minute and they called you instead. You're not compromised, which means you're now a liability. So the people following me want to kill you and take the van. They can't let you deliver it because we'll be waiting at the destination. But they also can't let you return to Sacramento with the cargo. So you're a loose end. This is insane." "Yeah, well, welcome to my Tuesday. Now open the back so I can verify the cargo, and we can get you out of here alive." I unlocked the rear door. She pulled it open and climbed inside with a flashlight. I heard her opening containers, moving things around. After a minute, she jumped back out. "Okay, it's here. All of it, which means they're definitely coming for you. What do I do?" "You drive exactly where I tell you. There's a highway patrol station 40 miles north. We get you there, you're safe, and we seize the cargo as evidence. But we have to leave now." "What about the vehicles following me?" She smiled. "Let me worry about that. We got back in our vehicles." She took the lead on her motorcycle, and I followed her out of the rest stop. As we merged back onto I-5, I saw the black SUV and silver pickup, both entering the rest stop behind us. They'd been waiting for me to stop. For the next 40 miles, that motorcycle stayed in front of me, weaving through traffic, always checking her mirrors to make sure I was keeping up. Twice I saw vehicles try to catch up to us, the black SUV, then a different truck, but she'd accelerate and I'd follow, and somehow we always stayed ahead. When we finally pulled into the highway patrol station, there were already 6 cruisers waiting. The woman got off her motorcycle and spoke to the officers, gesturing at my van. They took my statement, verified my identity, confiscated the cargo, told me the FBI would be in touch. The woman walked over as I was finishing. "You did good, David. Most people would have panicked. Are you really FBI?" She showed me a badge. "Really FBI? What happens now? Now you go home. Your company will be notified that the cargo was seized as part of an ongoing investigation. You'll probably be interviewed a few more times, and you'll want to be very careful for the next few months." "Careful how?" "The people who wanted this shipment are going to be unhappy. They might try to figure out if you were involved in setting them up. So if anyone contacts you, anyone you don't know, you call me immediately." She handed me a card. I drove home that night in a rental car the FBI provided. My van was evidence now. The whole thing felt like a fever dream. 2 weeks later, I got a package at my apartment. No return address. Inside was a photo of me driving, taken from someone's car window. On the back, someone had written, "We know where you live." I called the number on the FBI agent's card. It was disconnected. I moved 3 months later to a different city and changed careers. I work in a warehouse now, day shift, surrounded by people and cameras and security guards. But sometimes late at night, I still check my mirrors, still watch for motorcycles and black SUVs, still wonder if I'm really safe or if they're just waiting for me to forget. Because the thing about loose ends is they never really go away. Someone just decides when to tie them off. If you've made it this far, you're part of the Midnight Zephyr family. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and drop a comment telling me which story shook you the most. Your support keeps these stories coming every single week. Until next time, stay safe out there. And remember, some encounters don't end when you drive away. They just follow you home.
I need you to understand something before I tell you this. There are places in this world that don't follow the rules. Places where physics bends, where your mind starts playing tricks on itself, where you can't trust what you remember versus what actually happened. I found one of those places 3 years ago, and I've been trying to convince myself it wasn't real ever since. This happened in October of 2022. My girlfriend, Maya, and I had been talking about getting away for months, not like a vacation to some resort, but actually getting away. Away from phones constantly buzzing, away from the apartment that always felt too small, away from the version of ourselves we'd become in the city. We both worked these soul-crushing office jobs that left us feeling hollow by Friday afternoon. So when Maya found this cabin rental about 4 hours north, deep in the Cascade foothills, I didn't even look at the photos before saying yes. The listing described it as secluded and off-grid, which honestly sounded perfect. No Wi-Fi, no cell service, just us, some books, and whatever passed for silence anymore. We left on a Thursday morning. Maya drove the first half while I dozed in the passenger seat, and I remember thinking how good it felt to just exist without an agenda. The highway eventually gave way to 2-lane roads, then to poorly maintained county routes with names instead of numbers. Blackwood Pass, Settlers Ridge, roads that felt like they'd been forgotten by everyone except the people who absolutely had to use them. The GPS lost signal about 30 minutes before we were supposed to arrive. Maya had screenshotted the final directions, which told us to look for mile marker 47, then turn onto an unmarked gravel road. Unmarked should have been our first red flag, but we were too committed at that point, too excited about the idea of disconnection to notice we were driving towards something that felt a little too disconnected. We found mile marker 47 around 2:30 in the afternoon. The marker itself was half fallen, leaning against a rotted fence post like it had given up. The gravel road was more like two tire tracks with weeds growing between them, and the tree cover was thick enough that it felt like driving into a tunnel. Maya looked at me with this expression I couldn't quite read, not concern exactly, more like anticipation mixed with the smallest thread of doubt. "This is the right place, yeah?" she asked. I checked the screenshot for the 5th time. Has to be. There's no other mile marker 47. Looking back, I hate how certain I sounded. The cabin appeared after maybe 2 miles of driving through those trees. It sat in a clearing that felt deliberately carved out, like someone had decided this exact spot was where they wanted to exist and nothing else mattered. The cabin itself looked older than the listing photos suggested. The wood was weathered gray, and the windows had that rippled glass quality you only see in really old buildings. But it had a certain charm to it, that rustic, forgotten kind of charm that people pay extra for without realizing why it feels appealing. We parked and got out. The silence hit me immediately. Not peaceful silence, not the kind of quiet you get in the suburbs at night. This was the absence of sound. No birds, no wind moving through the trees, no distant highway hum, nothing. Just our footsteps on gravel and the sound of our breathing, which suddenly felt too loud. "It's really quiet here," Maya said, and I could hear something in her voice that matched what I was feeling but couldn't name yet. We unloaded our bags and headed inside. The cabin was a single large room with a loft bedroom accessible by a ladder, a small kitchenette, and a wood-burning stove that looked like it had been installed sometime in the 1970s. Everything smelled of cedar and dust and thyme. On the kitchen counter, there was a handwritten note from the owner. "Welcome. Firewood is stacked on the north side. Water from the pump is safe to drink. Please respect the forest. Some guests report unusual dreams. This is normal. Enjoy your stay." Maya laughed when she read it. Unusual dreams, that's one way to market a place. I didn't laugh. Something about that note felt wrong. Not threatening, but wrong in a way I couldn't articulate. Why would someone warn you about dreams? What did "this is normal" even mean? We spent the rest of the afternoon settling in. Maya made tea on the camping stove we'd brought, while I got the wood stove going. By the time the sun started setting, the cabin had warmed up, and we'd fallen into this easy rhythm. We played cards, we talked about nothing important, we opened a bottle of wine Maya had insisted on bringing. For a few hours, it felt exactly like what we'd wanted, an escape, a pause button on real life. But as it got darker outside, something shifted. The darkness out there wasn't normal. I know how that sounds. Darkness is darkness, right? But this was different. This was the kind of darkness that felt physical, like it had weight and presence. When I looked out the window, I couldn't see the tree line anymore, even though it was only maybe 50 feet away. It was just blackness pressed against the glass. Maya noticed it too. She stood at the window with her arms crossed, staring at nothing. "Do you think there are other people out here?" she asked. "Like other cabins?" "Yeah, or hikers, or anyone." I thought about the 2-mile drive through those trees, the lack of tire tracks, the way the forest felt empty in a way that went beyond just not seeing people. "I don't think so. Why?" She didn't answer right away. "I don't know. It just feels like we're really far from everything, farther than 4 hours should feel."
She was right. It did feel that way, like we'd driven not just into the woods, but into some pocket of space that existed separately from the world we'd left. We went to bed around 11. The loft bedroom was small, just big enough for the full-size mattress and our bags. Maya fell asleep almost immediately. I could hear her breathing even out, could feel her body relax next to me. But I couldn't sleep. Something was keeping me awake. Not fear exactly, more like hyper-awareness, like my brain was convinced it needed to stay alert for something it couldn't identify.
I lay there in the dark, listening to nothing. And then, maybe an hour after we'd gone to bed, I heard it. Footsteps. Not animal footsteps, not the random sounds of an old building settling. Footsteps, human footsteps, walking in a slow, deliberate circle around the cabin. The sound was muffled, like someone walking carefully through grass or soft dirt. I held my breath, listening. The steps continued, around and around, never stopping, never speeding up or slowing down, just this constant, measured pace. I wanted to wake Maya, but something stopped me. Maybe I was afraid she wouldn't hear it. Maybe I was afraid she would. I don't know. I just lay there, frozen, listening to someone walk circles around the cabin we were sleeping in. The footsteps continued for what felt like 20 minutes. Then they stopped. Not gradually, just stopped, mid-step, like whoever was out there had simply vanished. I waited in the silence, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might wake Maya, but nothing else happened. Eventually, exhaustion won, and I fell asleep. I had a dream that night, or maybe it wasn't a dream. I still can't decide. In it, I was standing outside the cabin. It was that same heavy darkness, but somehow I could see perfectly. There were 5 figures standing in a circle around me, but I couldn't make out their faces. They weren't threatening, they weren't moving, they were just there, watching. And then one of them spoke, but not with words. It was more like I understood what they were communicating directly into my mind. They said, "You're remembering wrong." I woke up gasping. Maya was already awake, sitting up in bed with her hand on my shoulder. "Did you feel that?" she asked. Her voice was shaking. "Feel what?" "The cabin. It moved, like someone picked it up and set it back down." I wanted to tell her she'd been dreaming, but I couldn't, because I'd felt it too. This subtle shift, like reality had hiccuped, like the world had skipped a frame. We climbed down from the loft as the first gray light of dawn started filtering through the windows. That's when we saw it. The furniture had been rearranged. Not dramatically, not like someone had trashed the place, but it had definitely been moved. The table was 3 feet to the left of where it had been. The 2 chairs were positioned differently. The rug was rotated 90 degrees, and our bags, which we'd left by the door, were now lined up perfectly along the wall, arranged by size. Maya grabbed my arm. "We need to leave, right now." I wanted to agree. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to get out. But something else was happening. Something I didn't understand. I felt calm. Not naturally calm. Artificially calm. Like someone had reached into my brain and turned down the panic dial manually. "Let me check outside first," I heard myself say, even though I didn't want to say it. I opened the door. The clearing looked exactly the same as it had yesterday. Trees surrounding us, gravel where we'd parked, our car sitting exactly where we'd left it. But something was different. It took me a second to figure out what. The car was facing the wrong direction. We'd parked facing the cabin. Now it was facing the road, like someone had turned it around during the night, without us hearing the engine, without us hearing anything. "Maya," I said quietly, "come look at this." She came to the door but wouldn't step outside. When she saw the car, her face went white. "That's not possible," she whispered. "We would have heard it. We would have heard the engine, the tires on the gravel, something." But we hadn't heard anything, except those footsteps.
those slow, deliberate footsteps circling the cabin like someone performing a ritual. We packed in complete silence. Neither of us said what we were both thinking, that whatever happened last night wasn't random, that it had been intentional, that something in these woods had done this to us, and we had no idea why. The drive out felt longer than the drive in. The gravel road seemed to stretch on forever, and the trees felt closer, like they were leaning in toward us. Maya drove fast, faster than was probably safe on that terrain, but I didn't tell her to slow down. When we finally hit the paved county road, we both just sat there, breathing hard like we'd been running. "What happened back there?" she asked. I didn't have an answer. I still don't.
Here's the thing that keeps me up at night. We went back through our phones after we got cell service again. Maya had taken photos when we first arrived, photos of the cabin, the clearing, the view from the loft window. When we looked at them, they were all wrong. The cabin in the photos wasn't the same cabin we'd stayed in. It was similar, but different. The door was on the wrong side, the windows were arranged differently, and in the background of one photo, barely visible in the tree line, there was a figure, just standing there, watching. We never talked about reporting it. Who would we tell? What would we even say? That someone rearranged furniture and turned our car around without making a sound? That we both had weird dreams and felt like reality glitched? They'd think we were on drugs or making it up for attention. But here's what really scares me. A week after we got back, I got an email. No subject line, no sender name, just a message that said, "Thank you for respecting the forest. You're always welcome back." Maya and I broke up 2 months later, not because of the cabin exactly, but because neither of us could look at the other without remembering, without feeling like we'd experienced something we weren't supposed to survive, and somehow that made us wrong for each other, like we were witnesses to something that fundamentally changed us. I still think about that note on the counter. Some guests report unusual dreams. This is normal. How many people had stayed there before us? How many people had experienced what we experienced? And why did the owner write about it like it was just a quirky feature of the property, like uneven water pressure or a sticky door? Sometimes late at night, I'll be lying in bed in my new apartment, and I'll hear footsteps, slow, deliberate, circling, and I have to remind myself that I'm on the 4th floor, that there's no one outside my window, that I'm not at mile marker 47 anymore. But part of me wonders if that's true. Part of me wonders if I ever really left. Because here's the thing nobody talks about. When something impossible happens to you, when you experience something that shouldn't exist, it doesn't just live in your past, it lives in your present, every day, every night. It becomes part of how you see the world. You start noticing things other people don't notice, patterns that might not be patterns, coincidences that feel a little too coordinated. 3 months ago, I was driving through a different part of the state for work. I wasn't anywhere near the Cascades, but I passed a mile marker 47. And for just a second, I swear I saw that gravel road, that unmarked turnoff with the rotted fence post, in a place it couldn't possibly be. I didn't turn, I kept driving, but I think about it constantly. Maya texted me last week, first time in over a year. She didn't say hello, didn't ask how I was doing, she just sent a photo. It was a screenshot of a cabin rental listing, different website, different name, but the same cabin, the exact same cabin, same weathered wood, same rippled windows, same note about unusual dreams. Except the listing said it was located in Vermont, over 2,000 miles from where we stayed. I haven't responded yet. I don't know what to say. Part of me wants to ask her if we think we should warn people, but another part of me, the part that remembers how that artificial calm felt, wonders if warning people is even possible.
Maybe the cabin only shows itself to people who are looking for exactly what we were looking for, an escape, a disconnection, a place that exists outside the normal rules. And maybe, once you find a place like that, it never really lets you leave. Before I go, I want to ask you something. If you've made it this far, if you've listened to this whole story, do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to Midnight Zephyr if you haven't already, because I need to know I'm not alone in this. I need to know other people are hearing these stories and recognizing that the world is stranger than we pretend it is, that there are places we shouldn't go, experiences we shouldn't seek out, and once we have them, we can't unknow what we've learned. I'll probably never know what really happened at that cabin, whether it was something supernatural or just a very elaborate human prank, whether those figures in my dream were real or just my brain trying to process fear. But I know this, I'm different now. Maya's different now, and whatever we encountered in those woods, it's still out there, still waiting at mile marker 47, still arranging furniture while people sleep, still turning cars around in perfect silence, still welcoming guests, still asking them to respect the forest, still promising them that the unusual dreams are normal. And the worst part is, sometimes late at night when I can't sleep, I think about going back, not because I want to, but because part of me feels like I left a piece of myself in that clearing, and the only way to get it back is to return. But I won't. I can't, because I'm afraid of what I'd find, or worse, I'm afraid of what would find me. Some doors, once you close them, should stay closed. Some roads, once you drive away, shouldn't be traveled again. And some places, no matter how much they call to you, should remain exactly where you left them. In the darkness, in the silence, in the space between the world you know and the world that exists underneath it, waiting.
My cat-sitting promise on a holiday is the reason I'm alive today. That's not an exaggeration. It's the cold, hard math of a night where every small decision, a favor, a stubborn errand, clicked into place like a lock, and a predator almost turned the key. This all unfolded 2 Thanksgivings ago. The memory is indelible, burned in not by warmth or family, but by a deep bodily sickness and the profound silence of empty city streets. I was in the grip of a brutal respiratory virus, the kind that feels less like an illness and more like a possession. By the holiday itself, the fever had broken. I was technically no longer contagious, but the aftermath, that was its own special prison. My body was a collection of raw nerves and aching bones, constantly trembling with chills no blanket could touch. And the cough, a harsh, rattling, involuntary spasm that hijacked my diaphragm every few seconds. It stole my breath, my voice, and any semblance of strength. Speaking was a painful, rasping effort. Weeks before, in the land of the healthy, I'd made a promise. A friend and coworker was flying out to be with family. She had an older cat, a sweet, fragile thing that needed daily medication mixed into its food. Her apartment was a short walk from our workplace. Of course, I'd said easily. It was a simple favor. But now, in the hollowed-out version of myself, that short walk felt like a Himalayan trek, yet backing out felt like a deeper failure. I'd said I would do it, so I would. Simultaneously, another thread was pulling at me. An old high school friend and I had been texting, reminiscing about tennis and bowling, sports we'd loved and abandoned to adult life. We'd made vague, hopeful plans to play. We should, we said, but my rackets and my trusty 13-pound bowling ball lived at my dad's house, a relic from a time when I had more space than a city dorm room. I was a carless college student, my world mapped by light rail lines and bus routes. A trip to my dad's was a quarterly expedition. Sickness had stranded me in the city for the holiday, a quiet, lonely Thanksgiving with leftovers and streaming services. But a stubborn, almost irrational determination took root. I needed to get my things. It felt crucial. If I didn't go today, the next opportunity might be months away. Our we should would fade again. So I concocted a plan, a complex logistical dance born of fever brain and desperation. I would take the light rail to a station that was a manageable walk from my dad's neighborhood. I'd text my brother to meet me there with my gear, no need to go all the way to the house. Then, on my return journey, I'd hop off at a different stop, catch a bus, and make the cat check detour before finally heading home. In my mind, it was efficient, a multitasker's masterpiece. The universe, of course, loves to mock such plans. The journey to get the gear was a blur of discomfort. The trains were ghostly, populated by a handful of souls who also had nowhere better to be. I felt every pair of eyes on my coughing form. But I succeeded. My brother, puzzled but obliging, met me with my tennis bag and the heavy, solid weight of my bowling ball in its case. "You're insane for doing this," he said, his breath fogging in the cold air. I just nodded, a coughing fit my only reply. Now came the second act. It was fully night, a deep November blackness that ate the light. I found my designated bus stop. It wasn't a cozy shelter, just a pole with a sign and a stretch of empty bench, lit by the sickly orange glow of a sodium vapor streetlight. This is where the world narrowed. This is where I became a perfect target. My phone's transit app became an instrument of torture. The digital screen promised one thing, reality another. Arriving 1 minute, it would chirp. I'd lean out, searching the deserted road for twin points of light. Nothing. I'd refresh. Next bus, 15 minutes. My heart would sink. Refresh again. Arriving 1 minute. This cruel loop continued for over 30 minutes. Time stretched and warped. Each minute was measured in coughs and chills. Let me paint the scene for you with the clarity of hindsight. It was after 9 p.m. on Thanksgiving. The commercial strip was dead. No shops open, no traffic, just the whisper of a distant highway and the brittle rustle of dead leaves skittering across pavement. And me, a 19-year-old woman, 5'3", drowning in a puffy winter coat. At my feet, a tennis bag, a bulky bowling ball case, and a plastic container of cold turkey and mashed potatoes. I was so visibly and audibly unwell, weak, burdened, alone. Vulnerability isn't just a feeling, it's a physical state, an aura that was broadcasting on every frequency. That's when the car arrived. It didn't speed by, it slowed. Then it pulled over, not at the bus stop, but a little ways past it. A nondescript sedan. The engine idled. I could see silhouettes inside, maybe 3 or 4 of them. The windows were up, but I could see their heads turning. Then laughter, loud and sharp, punctuated by words in a language I didn't understand. My already elevated guard went up another notch. Just someone being dropped off, I thought, willing it to be true. Just don't panic, it's a public stop. One door opened. A man unfolded himself from the back seat. He was tall, that was my first impression. The car didn't wait. It pulled away from the curb with a slight squeal of tires and disappeared down the dark road. The man stood there for a moment looking after it. Then he turned. The bus stop area was wide. There was a covered bench maybe 15 feet from me. I had positioned myself away from it, partly to have space for my things, partly to isolate my coughing spells. There was no reason for him to come near me. He walked directly towards me, not to the bench, to me. My internal alarm system, which had been pinging softly, now issued a low, sustained siren. He's just waiting. He doesn't want to sit on the cold bench. It's fine. I buried the fear under a mountain of rationalization. I glued my eyes to my phone's screen, to the lying digits of the bus arrival time. I leaned out again, scanning for headlights that refused to appear. I could feel his presence beside me, a solid, silent mass. The cough that racked my body felt like a betrayal, announcing my weakness. Minutes passed. Long, silent minutes where the only sounds were my ragged breathing, the occasional cough, and the distant city hum. Then, contact. A weight, heavy and deliberate. His arm, thick and solid, came down over my shoulders and around me, pulling me sideways into him. It wasn't a casual bump, it was an enclosure, a claim. My mind didn't go blank. It shattered into 1,000 glittering, useless pieces. Every thought, every plan, every bit of social scripting evaporated. My body's response was primal, absolute freeze, a deer in those exact headlights I'd been searching for. I stopped breathing. I stopped moving. I became an object in his grasp. After an eternity, probably 3 seconds, he mumbled. His voice was low, the words muffled and slurred. "You all right?" Or something close to it. The sound of my own voice when it came was alien, a thin, reedy whisper stripped of all power. "I'm fine, just waiting for the bus." It was the automatic response of a polite person in an utterly impolite situation. A few more heartbeats, and the pressure released. He let go and settled back onto the bench, though still far too close. The relief was instant and immense, but short-lived. Because now, the rationalizations came flooding back, desperate to explain away the terror. "He heard you coughing. He was concerned. He's just awkward, trying to be friendly in a weird way. He saw you looking sick and panicky." I clung to these stupid, flimsy stories. They were the only life raft in a sea of panic. Why didn't I run? Why didn't I scream? People ask that later, from the safety of their couches. In that moment, the calculus was simple and terrifying. He was a giant, well over 6 feet tall, built solid, easily double my weight. He wore a dark bandana over the lower half of his face. This was late pandemic. Masks were still common, but this felt different. It hid him. And we were in a concrete vacuum. No buildings with open windows, no passing cars, no one within screaming distance, even if I could scream. Running with a bowling ball and a cough? He'd catch me in 10 strides. My only strategy, forged in that icy instant, was passivity. Don't provoke. Don't give a reason for the situation to escalate. Wait for the bus. The bus was salvation. But the bus was a lie. His arm returned. This time it was bolder, the same tight grip around my shoulders, but now his hand moved, slowly, stroking my back. I could feel the pressure through the thick down of my jacket. A wave of nausea rose in my throat, mingling with the urge to cough. I held both back, rigid, pretending to be a piece of furniture. My eyes were locked on the road, praying for light. And then, a glow, a distant fuzzy set of headlights rounding a far-off curve. It could be a car. It could be the bus. I dared to hope. As the vehicle drew closer, its distinctive shape became clear. The city bus. Salvation on wheels. The tension in my body didn't release. It coiled tighter. As it rumbled toward us, its brakes sighing, I made my move. I slid out from under his arm, the movement stiff and awkward. I mumbled toward the ground. "That's my bus." His response wasn't a goodbye. It was a low, confirming grunt, a sound that said, "I know." And then he stood up, towering beside me. The intention was crystal clear. He was coming too. The doors hissed open. A wall of warm, stale air hit me. I should have looked the driver in the eye. I should have said, "This man is harassing me." The words were there, in my mind, but they couldn't get past the brick wall in my raw throat. Fear had sealed it shut. I climbed the steps, my legs watery. I didn't head for a seat. I went straight to the vertical pole near the front and held on, my knuckles white. If I sat, he would sit next to me. This way I was upright. He, due to his size and the bus's layout, was funneled into a seat a few rows back. I could feel his gaze on the back of my neck. With the physical space between us, my frozen mind finally sparked. I fumbled my phone out. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely type. I texted a friend, the words chaotic jumble. A man followed me on bus, at my stop, scared, don't know what to do. Sending it felt both crucial and utterly futile. Calling 911 was out of the question. He would hear every whispered word. Did he have a knife? A gun? The thought paralyzed me anew. But another, more chilling thought surfaced. The car full of men who dropped him off. Where did they go? Were they part of this? Were they waiting somewhere, a second act to his first? This wasn't just a random creep. This felt coordinated, a hunt. I had to think. He would follow me off. That was a given now. I couldn't lead him to my friend's apartment. That was off the table. My mind raced over the bus route, a map flashing behind my eyes. And then I remembered. The stop before my intended one was for the large open-air shopping plaza where I worked. It was 9:30 p.m. All the retail stores were closed, their gates down, but the plaza itself had 24-hour security patrols and cameras everywhere. And more importantly, my restaurant co-workers would still be there, finishing the closing side work. The front doors were locked, but the back employee entrance, that was always open until the last person left. It was a two-door system. First, a gate into the fenced trash and storage enclosure. Then, a heavy metal door with a keypad. A sanctuary with two locks. It was my only play. As the bus approached the plaza stop, I moved to the rear door. He was instantly on his feet, a shadow detaching itself from the seat. The doors opened. I stepped down onto the cold asphalt. Within a second, his hand was on my shoulder again. This time, the grip was different. It wasn't an embrace. It was a clamp. Fingers digging in, holding me in place, controlling my movement. I had to take small, shuffling steps to avoid falling. He was steering me. The plaza gates were about 100 yards away. It felt like a mile. My heart was a frantic bird against my ribs. I couldn't run yet, not while he had this grip. If I broke away too soon, he'd overtake me long before I could get through both doors. I had to get closer. I had to endure this horrifying, intimate procession. We passed through the main gate into the desolate plaza walkway. My restaurant was in the far corner. The neon sign was dark. Everything was dark, save for the cold blue security lights. The silence was absolute, broken only by our footsteps and my pounding pulse. I was leading a predator to my workplace. The absurdity of it almost made me laugh, a hysterical bubble in my chest. We rounded the corner to the back service alley, and then I saw it. A miracle. The first door, the heavy gate into the trash enclosure, was propped open with a rubber wedge, and beyond it, the main employee entrance, the heavy metal door, was also wide open. Framed in the rectangle of warm yellow light were two of my coworkers, Marco, a line cook, and Jess, a server. They were just chatting, taking out the last bags of trash, their laughter a soft, normal sound in the abnormal night. Life. People, safety. His arm shifted slightly as he navigated the turn, his attention momentarily divided by the environment. It was now or never. I dropped the container of leftovers. It hit the ground with a plastic clatter. In the same motion, I threw my weight forward and down, twisting my shoulder with a desperate, wrenching motion. The tennis bag and bowling ball case swung wildly, hitting his leg. His fingers slipped. I was free. I didn't run. I lunged, stumbling, half falling forward through the open gate. I crashed into the enclosure, my voice finally breaking loose in a hoarse, broken scream whisper aimed at Jess. "He's following me! Close it! Now!" Her eyes went wide. She didn't ask a single question. She didn't hesitate. In one fluid motion, she grabbed the heavy metal door and threw her weight against it. Slam! The solid thunk of the lock engaging was the most beautiful sound I have ever heard. It was less than 2 seconds later that the handle began to jerk violently. Clang, clang, clang! Then a fist pounding on the metal. Boom, boom, boom. I was on the ground, gasping, coughing, tears streaming down my face. I had made it. By the width of a propped open door and the speed of a friend's trust, I had made it. For a moment, there was only the sound of my own choking sobs and the violent rhythmic banging on the other side of the door. Boom, boom, boom. Each impact vibrated through the concrete floor. Marco, the cook, was already on his phone, his voice low and urgent, calling mall security. Jess stood braced against the door, as if her slight frame could add to its strength, her face pale but determined. "Who is that?" she hissed, her eyes locked on mine. I tried to speak, but another coughing fit seized me, bending me double. When it passed, I forced the words out, each one a scrape of sandpaper. "Don't know. Bus stop. He followed me. Wouldn't let go." The banging stopped as suddenly as it had begun. A new, worse silence filled the space. We all froze, listening. Then the scuff of shoes on asphalt. He was moving. Cautiously, Jess peered out the narrow, wire-reinforced window in the door. "He's walking away," she whispered, toward the front of the plaza. We waited, huddled in the back hallway, the fluorescent lights humming overhead. The normalcy of the restaurant's back area, the smell of sanitizer, the stainless steel counters, the rack of clean aprons, felt surreal against the terror of the last 20 minutes. My body was beginning to shake uncontrollably, the delayed shock setting in. About 5 minutes later, 2 security officers arrived. They were calm, professional, their radios crackling with static. I told my story in fragments, between coughs and tremors. They took notes, their faces impassive. "Did he say what he wanted?" asked one. "No, just kept touching me, and then he followed me." "Did you see where he went?" Jess spoke up. "He walked around front. I lost sight of him." The officers exchanged a look. "We'll check the cameras and do a sweep," the older one said. "You should stay inside." As they left, Marco pointed silently out the front window of the darkened restaurant. Across the pedestrian walkway was an ice cream shop, also closed for the night, its interior dark except for the dim glow of a freezer light. And there, clearly visible, was the man. He was just standing inside the doorway, looking directly at our restaurant, a silent, patient silhouette in the glass. He wasn't running. He wasn't hiding. He was waiting, watching. Seeing him there, so brazen, so utterly unconcerned about being seen, sent a fresh icicle of fear through my heart. This wasn't a crime of opportunistic passion. This was purpose. The security officers saw him too. We watched as they approached the ice cream shop door. They spoke to him through the glass. We couldn't hear the words, but we saw his gestures, a shrug, an outstretched hand as if explaining something mundane. After a few minutes, he walked out with them. They didn't handcuff him, they just talked. Then he simply walked away, out of the plaza gates and into the night. One of the officers came back to us. "He says he was just worried about you," the officer reported, his tone neutral. "Said you looked sick and distressed, and he was trying to be a good Samaritan. Got carried away. He apologized." The words hung in the air, absurd and insulting. A good Samaritan who wraps his arm around a terrified stranger and follows her off a bus? A good Samaritan who pounds on a locked door after she flees? "I don't think that's what happened," I whispered, but the fight was draining out of me, replaced by a heavy, cold exhaustion. "We have his information from his ID," the officer said. "We have the footage. The company can pursue trespassing charges if they want, since he entered a closed retail space. For you, it's your call if you want to file a police report for harassment or unlawful restraint. It's a bit of a he said, she said, but the footage of him following you is pretty clear." The offer felt hollow. I was a sick, exhausted college student. The idea of navigating police reports, court dates, facing him again, it felt like a second, more protracted nightmare. I need to think," I said. The officer nodded, handed me a card with a case number, and left. The adrenaline was gone now, leaving a void of utter depletion. Jess looked at me. "You can't go check the cat, and you sure as hell can't take the bus home." She didn't ask. She just took my keys, got my friend's address from me, and drove me there herself. We went in together, a united front. The cat, oblivious, purred and rubbed against our legs as I mechanically dispensed its medicine. The normal, simple act of caring for this small creature in a quiet apartment was profoundly jarring. Then Jess drove me all the way back to my dorm, walking me to my door. "Text me when you're locked in," she said, and waited until she heard the deadbolt click. The next few days were a blur of physical recovery and mental fog. I told a few close friends, my voice still raspy. Their reactions were a mix of horror, anger, and the inevitable frustrating question, "Why didn't you scream sooner?" I had no answer that satisfied them, or even myself.
A week later, my manager pulled me aside before my shift. "Security forwarded the full report," he said, his voice uncharacteristically quiet. "They've got him on camera from the moment you entered the plaza. The whole thing. They've identified him. They asked if you want to press charges. They'd back you up." He looked at me, waiting. This was the moment, the chance for justice, for consequence. I thought of the man's calm explanation to the guards. I thought of the car that dropped him off. I thought of the chilling patience in his watch from across the plaza. If I pressed charges, my name would be on a document opposite his. He would know exactly who I was. "What did he say he was doing there?" I asked, deflecting. "To security, I mean." My manager shifted uncomfortably. "He stuck to the story. Said he was concerned, said he thought you might need help getting home, said he got confused when you ran." A good Samaritan, a misunderstanding. It was the perfect gaslighting defense. It made me look irrational, paranoid. In a courtroom with a halfway decent lawyer, who would a jury believe? The tall man expressing concern, or the hysterical, sick young woman who misinterpreted kindness? The fear that had gripped me at the bus stop was nothing compared to the cold, systemic fear that washed over me then. The fear of not being believed, the fear of the process, the fear of him knowing he had a name to attach to the face he hunted. I'm not sure," I finally said to my manager. "Can I think about it?" He nodded, patting my shoulder. "Just let me know." He never brought it up again. I never followed up. The case number card got lost in a drawer. Life, in its relentless way, moved on. Classes, work, friends. The sharp edges of the memory began to soften, blurred by time and willful forgetting. I buried it, deep down in a mental lockbox labeled "Things That Happened." It was the only way to function. But the lockbox wasn't sealed tight. It leaked in subtle ways. I became hyper-vigilant at bus stops, always positioning myself under a camera, near other people. I stopped wearing headphones at night. I developed a habit of texting my location when I was out late. The world had shifted, ever so slightly on its axis. The backdrop of assumed safety was gone, replaced by a permanent low-grade scan for threats. And then, just a few weeks ago, the lockbox burst open. A text message from the same friend. "Hey, heading out of town for Thanksgiving again? Any chance you're around to check on Mittens? Same meds as last time." Last time. Those two words were a key. They twisted in the lock of that buried box, and it sprang open, flooding me with a sensory tsunami. The orange streetlight glow, the weight of the bowling ball, the feel of that heavy arm, the sound of the banging door, the silhouette in the ice cream shop, the crushing weight of his explanation. I sat there, staring at my phone, my heart racing as if it were happening all over again. I had to type my reply 3 times before my fingers stopped shaking. "Sorry, actually going to be out of town myself this year." A lie. A necessary one. Some doors once closed should never be reopened. I never learned what that man truly wanted. The official story is one of misguided concern, but in the quiet hours of the night, I know. I feel it in my bones. His patience, his coordination with the car, his calm demeanor with security, it spoke of something practiced. I wasn't a random target of opportunity. I was selected, isolated, tested. And the only thing that stopped him wasn't my courage or my wit. It was a series of mundane miracles. A bus that finally came, a workplace with a back entrance, a door left ajar, and friends who acted without hesitation. Survival isn't about bravery. It's about the fragile chain of small things that break in your favor. The scariest stories aren't about monsters under the bed. They're about the men who look like men, standing in the light, waiting for you to be alone. That Thanksgiving night taught me that danger doesn't always roar. Sometimes it sits down quietly next to you and asks if you're all right. And the aftermath isn't about cathartic justice. It's often about living with the silence of unanswered questions and the permanent, quiet calibration of your own safety in a world that can look perfectly normal right up until the moment it isn't. If this story unsettled you, if it resonated with that quiet voice in the back of your own mind, do me a favor, like this video. That simple act lets me know these narratives matter. And if you want to explore more true stories that live in the gray area between shadow and doubt, stories that question the reality of the everyday, hit subscribe and follow Midnight Zephyr. Your support is what allows me to bring these haunting experiences into the light. Stay curious, but stay safe.
You know that feeling when you get a deal that's just too good? That was this apartment. All I had to do was sign a 1-year lease and agree to one simple rule. Never, under any circumstances, enter the maintenance room in the basement. The landlord said it was for insurance. I said it was a steal. I was wrong. That room, it wasn't for storage, and the thing inside it wasn't always locked in. Man, city living will bleed you dry. By the time I landed the remote IT gig, I was couch surfing, my bank account was a ghost town, and my dignity was in the rear view. So when the listing for 217B Elmhurst Street popped up, I thought the universe was finally throwing me a bone. A whole 1-bedroom in a quiet old brownstone for less than half the going rate. The photos online were fuzzy, but who cares? The price was a scream. The landlord, Mr. Armitage, was an older dude who moved like his joints were filled with sand. He showed me the place on a Tuesday afternoon. Sunlight struggled through the dusty bay windows, painting the hardwood floors in long, tired stripes. The air smelled like lemon polish and something else, something dry, like old newspapers in a sealed attic. "It's a solid building," Armitage croaked, his voice a dry leaf rustle. "Quiet. The other tenant, Miss Gable, on the first floor, she's been here 40 years. She minds her business, you mind yours." The tour was quick. Kitchen, bathroom, bedroom. All clean, all empty. Then, as we headed back toward the foyer, he paused at the top of the basement stairs. A heavy industrial door was at the bottom, painted a chipped, gloomy gray. "Basement's just for utilities and storage. My storage," he said, not looking at me. He fished a single tarnished key from his pocket. "This is the only key. You will never need to go down there. In fact, it's Clause 7B in the lease. Tenant shall not access the designated maintenance room. Insurance reasons, structural integrity, you understand." I shrugged. "I don't have stuff to store anyway, not a problem." He looked at me then, his eyes pale and watery. He held my gaze a beat too long. "Good, that's good." I signed the lease that day, moved in with my 3 boxes and a mattress on the floor. The first week was paradise. Quiet, cheap, peaceful. I'd hear Miss Gable's ancient television murmur through the floorboards sometimes, a soap opera soundtrack to my new life. But by the end of week 2, the sounds started. Not from Miss Gable, from the walls. It began with the pipes, a low rhythmic knock, knock, knock that would start around 1 a.m. deep in the building's guts. Just old plumbing, right? Then the scratching. Not mice. This was deliberate, like something blunt being dragged slowly, thoughtfully along the inside of the plaster. It would trace the perimeter of my living room wall, stop behind my headboard, then fade away. I mentioned it to Armitage when he came to collect the rent. He stood in my doorway, never fully crossing the threshold. "Old building," he said, his eyes darting past me toward the heat register. "Settles, pipes expand, you get used to it." But his hands were trembling, and he left so fast he almost forgot the check. The isolation got to me. Working remote meant days could pass without speaking to another soul. I started talking to the building. "Quiet down," I'd mutter when the knocking started. "Give it a rest," I'd whisper to the scratching in the walls. One Tuesday, the building answered. I was washing a dish, staring out the kitchen window into the narrow alley. The scratching in the wall beside me was particularly loud. Annoyed, I knocked back. Bang, bang, bang. The scratching stopped. Then, from inside the wall, clear as a bell, came 3 slow, deliberate knocks in reply. Bang, bang, bang. My blood went cold. I dropped the plate. It shattered in the sink. For an hour, I just stood there listening to the terrible, thick silence. That's when I started noticing the other thing. The smell from the tour, that dry, papery scent, it was strongest near the heat vents. And on particularly cold nights, when the furnace in the basement would kick on, the air that blew out would carry something else, a faint coppery tang, like a handful of old pennies. It made the back of my throat itch. I avoided the basement stairs like a plague door, but the mystery was a poison seeping into my thoughts. Why such a cheap apartment? Why that one insane rule? What was so important in a maintenance room that it needed a clause in a legal document? I found Miss Gable collecting her mail one afternoon. She was a tiny bird of a woman, wrapped in a faded floral shawl. "Lovely building, isn't it?" she said, her voice surprisingly strong. "It's quiet," I offered.
Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Mr. Armitage is a stickler for rules. His father was the same, and his grandfather. This building, it's been in their family a long time. They know how to manage it. She leaned in, and for a second her pleasant mask slipped. "Some things," she whispered, "are better managed than removed. You understand? Don't go poking. Just live quietly." She shuffled back into her apartment and closed the door with a soft, final click, a warning disguised as neighborly advice. The next night, the sleep paralysis hit. I woke at 3:33 a.m., the digital clock burning the numbers into the dark. I was wide awake, but my body was stone, couldn't twitch a finger, couldn't scream. All I could do was stare at my bedroom doorway. And in the hallway, backlit by the faint green glow of the microwave clock in the kitchen, a shape stood. Tall, impossibly thin, its silhouette warped. It wasn't Mr. Armitage. It wasn't human. It stood at a slight angle, head cocked, as if listening to the very beat of my terrified heart. It didn't move for an eternity. Then, with a jerky, unnatural motion, it slid sideways out of view, not walking, but sliding, toward the living room, toward the basement door. When I could move, I vomited. I spent the rest of the night with every light on, a kitchen knife on the coffee table. The scratching in the walls that night was different. It was eager. That was it. I wasn't living with a rat problem. I was living on top of something, and Mr. Armitage knew. Clause 7B wasn't for insurance. It was a containment protocol. I was part of the containment. My presence, my life in the apartment above, was the cork in the bottle.
Driven by a mix of terror and rage, I went to confront him. He wasn't at his listed office. I drove to the address on the lease, a well-kept house across town. An elderly woman answered, his sister. When I mentioned 217 Elmhurst, her face crumpled. "He's not here," she said, her voice trembling. He stays at the building most nights now, has for years, since the incident with the previous tenant in 4B. She caught herself, shaking her head. "You shouldn't be there. He said he wouldn't rent it out again, not after the last one. Left." "Left how?" I pushed, my heart hammering. She just started closing the door. "The lease is the lease. He's just the caretaker. We all are. Just leave it be." Caretaker, the word echoed. He wasn't a landlord. He was a warden. I returned to the brownstone, a plan forming in my panic-riddled mind. It was a breach of contract, a stupid, dangerous idea, but I had to know. If I knew what was in the bottle, maybe I could seal it for good, or at least know what was watching me sleep. I waited until 2 a.m. The building was tomb quiet. I took a crowbar from my toolkit and crept down the basement stairs. The gray door loomed. The lock was old but heavy-duty. It took 3 tries, each metallic crack sounding like a gunshot in the silence, before the bolt gave way. The door swung inward on silent hinges. The room was small, empty, no boiler, no boxes, just concrete and dust. And in the far wall, another door. This one was newer, steel, with a heavy industrial bolt on this side, like something you'd find on a walk-in freezer or a vault. This lock was easier. I slid the bolt back. The seal broke with a hiss of stale air. The smell hit me first, that dry, coppery penny smell, so thick I could taste it. The room was pitch black. I clicked on my phone's flashlight. The beam illuminated a space not meant for maintenance. The walls were covered floor to ceiling in writing, not graffiti, neat cursive script layered over itself, a mad librarian's catalog, all in the same ink, now faded brown. As my light moved, I saw what they were. Names, dates, apartment numbers, 4B, 3A, 2C, going back decades. The last entry, in fresher ink, was previous tenant 4B, 2021. In the center of the floor was a circle, drawn in the same brown substance. Salt was piled around its edge, now gray with dust, and in the very center of the circle, sitting neatly on the concrete, was a small hand-sewn doll. It was made of rough burlap, featureless, and it was warm to the touch. My light caught something else tucked in the corner, a small leather-bound journal, Armitage's. The last entry was dated the day I moved in. New tenant in 4B, young, alone, financially strained, ideal. The binding requires a living presence above the circle, a channel for its attentions, to keep it focused, fed on the minor anxieties of a single life, rather than letting its hunger grow and look outward. It is a repulsive calculus, but the only one that works. Grandfather's method. We are not landlords, we are shepherds, and the thing in the walls is the wolf we keep sated with one sheep at a time. God forgive me. I dropped the journal, the binding, the caretaker. I wasn't a tenant, I was a sacrifice, a distraction. The scratching, the knocking, the figure, it was all because I was the designated source of fear, the immigrant meal. As the truth hollowed me out, I heard the steel door behind me creak softly. I turned. The thing stood in the doorway of the inner room. It wasn't a shadow, it was a negative space, a man-shaped void where the light from my phone just died. It was tall, its limbs too long, and it leaned into the room at that same impossible angle I'd seen in my hallway. It had no face, but I felt its attention fix on me, not with malice, but with a terrifying, familiar recognition, like a pet seeing its keeper. A soft, dry scrape echoed in the small room, not from it, from the walls around me. The scratching, it was all around me now, and it was happy. I ran. I left the doors open, the journal on the floor. I flew up the stairs, grabbed my laptop and go bag, and fled into the night. I didn't look back. I crashed at a motel 50 miles away and broke the lease via an email from a burner account. Armitage never contacted me. No penalty, no demand. My security deposit showed up in my account a week later. No explanation. I thought that was the end. I got a new place, tried to forget, but last week, the new guy at work, Leo, was complaining about his search for an apartment. "Dude, I found this insane deal." He pulled out his phone. "A little old, but look at this price. It's a steal." He showed me the listing. The photos were different, brighter, but the layout was indispensable. The bay window, the hallway, 217B Elmhurst Street. My mouth dried. "Leo, man, don't. There's a bad draft. The pipes are loud." He laughed. "For this price, I can live with a few knocks in the night." He signed the lease yesterday, and tonight, as I sit here in my safe, quiet, overpriced apartment, I can't shake the feeling. I can almost hear it if I listen hard enough in the silence of my own mind. A faint, rhythmic scratching, not in my walls, but in his. And I know with a cold certainty that I didn't escape. I just passed the knife to the next person at the table. Mr. Armitage found a new shepherd for his wolf, and the lease, as always, has just one simple rule. Thanks for listening to my story. If you've ever moved into a place that just never felt right, you're not alone. Share your own strange experience in the comments below. And for more tales from the shadows of everyday life, make sure you're subscribed to Midnight Zebra and hit the bell so you don't miss the next one.
I need to tell you about the Christmas we almost didn't survive. The night the woods decided we were the gift. It starts, like so many nightmares do, with a beautiful idea. My wife, Elena, saw it on a blog, "Find Your Perfect Wild Christmas." It was pitched as a return to simplicity, a wholesome family memory in the making. Our daughter, Lily, was 6. To her, it was magic. To me, a city guy who liked his holidays predictable, it was a concession. But the pictures of smiling families in snowy groves, they got me. I rented a rugged-looking SUV, bought an expensive axe I had no idea how to properly use, and we set our course for the remote White Pine National Forest the weekend after Thanksgiving. The journey itself felt like an achievement. We left behind gray slush for pristine white powder. The pines grew thicker, the towns farther apart. Elena navigated using downloaded maps that warned of sporadic service. Lily sang Christmas songs in the back seat. We turned off the main highway onto a Forest Service road, just gravel and ice, and followed it for what felt like forever, the GPS dot blinking stubbornly in a field of green. Our destination wasn't a tree farm, it was just a set of GPS coordinates with a note, "Designated Self-Serve Cutting Area, Lot D." Lot D was a widening in the road, a frozen mud patch with a single yellowing sign hammered into a tree. No other cars. The silence when I shut off the engine was immense. It wasn't peaceful, it was absorbent, swallowing the last echoes of our radio. We bundled up. I hefted the axe. Lily made the first footprint in the untouched snow leading into the trees, and we followed. The first 10 minutes were pure holiday card, sunlight filtered weakly through high clouds, glittering on the snow. Lily dashed between massive trunks, declaring each one the one before spotting another. We were laughing, taking pictures, but the forest here was old, deep. The further we walked, the taller the trees seemed to loom, closing ranks. The playful shouts started to feel small.
Elena stopped laughing first. "It's so quiet," she said, not in wonder, but in observation. She was right. No bird calls, no scuttling of squirrels, just the occasional soft collapse of snow sliding from a branch. We kept going, determined to find our prize. The path, barely a game trail now, began to descend into a gully where the snow was even deeper. That's where we found the grove, a cathedral of perfect Fraser firs, their branches sagging with snow. "Here!" Lily yelled, her voice muffled. This was it! I planted my feet, feeling a silly pride, and swung the axe into the trunk of a beautiful 7-footer. The sound was shockingly loud, a violation in the silence. I swung again. On the third swing, I stopped mid-motion. A cold that had nothing to do with the air went through me. I looked at Elena. Her eyes were wide. She'd heard it too, not an echo. From the ridge above the gully, to our left, another axe blow, a perfect answering sound. We stood frozen. Lily, sensing the shift, clung to Elena's leg. "Daddy?" "Shh, honey." Nothing. No movement. Just the silent, watching trees. "Probably just another family," I said, my voice too cheerful. "Echoes do weird things out here." I didn't believe it. An echo doesn't come from a different direction. I raised the axe, hesitated, and brought it down again. A beat. Then, from the ridge, directly above us now, another sharp crack of wood. Then, from further down the gully, to our right, another. It was a conversation, and we were the topic. "Time to go," Elena said, her voice a tight wire. She picked up Lily. "We're leaving, now." I didn't argue. We abandoned the tree, half cut. We turned and began to climb back up the path we'd made, our earlier footprints now seeming like a trail of breadcrumbs we desperately needed to follow back to the car. The playful adventure was gone, replaced with a raw, primal need for the car, for the road, for other people. We were halfway up the gully side when we saw him, a man standing on the ridge, looking down at us. He wasn't holding an axe, he was just watching. He wore a dark green coat, too thin for the weather, and no hat. His hair was wild. He made no gesture. He didn't need to. His presence was a blockade. The wilderness doesn't care about your plans. It only cares if you belong.
"Go around," I whispered. We veered off our path, plunging through deeper snow, away from him. My heart was a hammer. I gripped the axe, not as a tool, but as a talisman. When I dared to look back, he was gone from the ridge. But as we broke through to the flatter ground near the road, he was there again, ahead and to our right, moving parallel to us through the trees, keeping pace without seeming to hurry. A second figure appeared, further back, doing the same on our left. They were flanking us. We were being steered. "Run!" I hissed. We ran. Lily bounced in Elena's arms. The SUV was a gray slab in the distance, our sole promise of safety. We stumbled into the lot, heaving. I fumbled for the key fob. The lights flashed, the doors unlocked with a sound like salvation. Elena yanked the back door open to get Lily in, and a guttural scream tore from her throat. Not a human scream of fear, an animal sound of pure, uncomprehending horror. Inside the SUV, piled neatly on Lily's car seat, was a mound of freshly cut pine boughs. Not a haphazard pile, a nest, a deliberate arrangement. And resting on top of the green needles was a single old-fashioned woodworking chisel, its blade dark and stained. They had been here. They had been inside our locked car. I slammed the door shut. "Get in the front! Lock it!" I scrambled into the driver's seat, the axe across my lap. My hands shook so badly I could barely get the key in the ignition. I turned it. The engine clicked. Dread, oily and cold, flooded my veins. I tried again. Click, 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 click. The battery was dead, or worse, the wiring had been pulled.
We were trapped in a metal box at the edge of the known world. Elena was dialing 911. No signal, no signal. She climbed out, holding the phone high, walking in desperate circles. A single bar flickered. Yes, hello, we need... The call dropped. She redialed, sobbing now. We're at Lot D, White Pine. Our car is disabled. There are men... She was pacing further from the SUV, chasing the ghost of a signal. Elena, don't go far, I yelled, rolling down the window. From the tree line, the man in the green coat stepped out into the open. He was closer now, maybe 50 yards away. He just stared at Elena, pacing with her phone. Then he raised his arm and pointed, not at her, but at me in the driver's seat. His mouth moved, shaping silent words I couldn't hear. Then behind him, others stepped out of the shadows. Not 2, 5, 6, men and women, all dressed in mismatched, worn-out winter gear. They stood in a loose line, silent, watching, not advancing, just presenting themselves. You don't realize how many eyes the forest has until they all decide to look back at you. Elena saw them. She froze, the phone falling to her side. She backed towards the car, never turning away from them. Get in now, I whispered. She fumbled for the door handle, got in, locked it. We sat, holding Lily between us in the front seat, a terrified huddle. What do they want? Elena wept. I had no answer. The group at the tree line didn't move. They were waiting for something. For nightfall? For us to try to run on foot? My mind raced through horrific scenarios. Then, a new sound, a low rumble, growing louder. Not an engine, a large old truck, its suspension groaning, came bumping down the forest service road. An ancient rust-red Dodge pickup with a wood plank bed. It rolled into the lot and stopped between us and the tree line. The driver, an older man with a thick gray beard, climbed out. He wore a proper parka and boots. He looked normal. He looked like help. He glanced at the silent group in the trees, then at our SUV with its hood up. He walked towards my window. I rolled it down a crack, the axe ready on my lap. Trouble? He asked, his voice gravelly but calm. Our car won't start, and those people, I gestured weakly. He nodded slowly, looking past me at Elena and Lily. Yeah, they're around here. Don't mean no harm usually, just curious. Live out here year-round, off the books. You folks are a long way from where you belong. Can you help us? A jump? A ride? My desperation was naked in my voice. He spat into the snow. I can give you a tow to the ranger station, but not with the little one in the car. Too dangerous on these roads with a strap. My truck's cab is full. She'd have to ride in the back with the gear. The thought of putting Lily in the bed of that truck, with this stranger, with those people watching, it was unthinkable. It felt exactly like what they might want. No, I said too quickly. We'll wait for a ranger. We called the police. The old man's eyes changed, a flicker of something. Impatience? Annoyance? Suit yourself. Rangers don't patrol out here on weekends this time of year. Gets dark early. He looked at the sky, then back at the tree line. The group in the trees hadn't moved. Dark comes fast in the gully. He got back in his truck. He didn't leave. He just sat there, engine idling, a plume of diesel exhaust hanging in the frozen air. A third party, or was he the first party? Was the pickup part of the trap, the rescue that would separate us? The standoff stretched, the silent group, the idling truck, our three frozen in our dead SUV. The sun was dipping behind the mountains, painting the snow in long, cold blue shadows. The temperature was plummeting. Then a new sound, a different engine, a higher whine, and lights, red and blue flashes reflecting off the snow down the road. A state police cruiser moving fast, bouncing into the lot. The effect was instantaneous. The group in the trees melted backward into the gloom and were gone. The old man in the pickup shifted into gear and without a second look drove off the way he came, disappearing down a side track I hadn't even noticed. The trooper was a young man, alert. He took our stammering story seriously. He tried to jump the SUV. It wasn't the battery. The fuel line had been deliberately pinched shut. Sabotage. He radioed for a flatbed. "You see that lot back there?" He pointed his flashlight at the tree line. "Fresh tracks. A lot of them. You folks are lucky. There's a whole network of abandoned mining shacks back in these hills. Sometimes people occupy them, not good people. They see a nice rental SUV, a family. You might have been seen as an opportunity." An opportunity, a resource, a gift. He waited with us for the tow truck, his cruiser's engine running to give us heat. No one spoke. Lily fell into an exhausted sleep. As the flatbed winched our useless vehicle up, the trooper shone his spotlight into the woods. For a moment, between two thick pines, I swear I saw the pale, watching face of the man in the green coat. Then it was gone. We never got our tree. We drove home in a rental sedan the next day, a silent, hollowed-out trio. We sold the axe at a garage sale. Lily, now a teenager, has only vague, dreamlike memories of that day. But Elena and I, we remember. We remember the answering axe blows in the woods, the nest of boughs in the car seat, the line of silent watchers, the idling truck that offered a terrible choice. The woods hold more than trees. If this story made you think twice about what's just off the trail, let me know by liking this video. It truly helps Midnight Zebra bring you more of these true, unsettling tales. And subscribe so you don't miss what's lurking in the shadows next time. My childhood fear of midnight on New Year's Eve wasn't about monsters under the bed. It was about the man at my window who found me during a Christmas celebration. When I was 6 years old, the world felt like one big, glittering adventure. My birthday had just passed in November, so I was riding that high straight into the most magical time of the year. And the most memorable gift I received that Christmas would pull me straight into a nightmare. I grew up in the Dallas area, surrounded by sports fans. That year, my interests were just starting to ignite. For my birthday, I was given tickets to see a professional basketball game at the end of December. I was ecstatic. But Christmas morning brought an even bigger surprise. Among the wrapped boxes, I found a brand new jersey for my favorite football player. Alongside it was a sweatshirt and t-shirt for the local NBA team. My parents smiled, telling me these were just the warm-up. Their real present to me was another set of tickets, this time for a game just 2 days after Christmas. The night of that first game was everything I dreamed. The arena was a cathedral of noise and light. Our seats felt impossibly close to the action, just a handful of rows from the gleaming court. I remember the dizzying height of the players, the squeak of their shoes, the thunderous slam of the ball. My team won in a close, exciting finish. Driving home, my face was practically glued to the window, replaying every moment. I couldn't wait to go back. I had no idea that the next visit would change everything. A few days later, we returned for the second game. The energy was different from the start. We sat much higher up this time, tucked into a corner section. The view was still incredible, but it felt more detached, more anonymous. By halftime, the home team was dominating, leading by a huge margin. The predictable victory loosened the crowd. My parents decided it was a good time to beat the lines and get some snacks. We navigated the buzzing concourse, a river of people in team colors. I was holding a half-eaten bag of candy from earlier. Seeing a trash can about 30 feet away, I tugged on my mom's sleeve and said I'd be right back. She nodded, her eyes on the concession stand menu. I weaved through a few groups of legs and tossed my trash. As I turned, a shadow fell over me. A tall man was standing there. He wasn't smiling, but his voice was calm. "Hey there, partner. You look a little turned around." I shook my head, suddenly shy. He glanced around. "I don't see your folks. Come on, let's go find them." Before I could process it, his hand closed around mine. His grip wasn't tight, but it was firm. My 6-year-old brain, trained to listen to adults, simply followed. He didn't lead me toward the bustling food court. Instead, he started walking purposefully toward the stadium's upper levels. The higher we climbed, the quieter it became. The roar of the crowd softened to a distant rumble. The carpeted hallways gave way to colder concrete passages. He mentioned something about using the arena's speaker system to page my parents. I just nodded, my shoes scuffing against the floor. We reached a deserted landing near some service elevators. He paused, looking around. For the first time, a cold trickle of fear dripped down my spine. This wasn't right. The lessons from school, stranger danger, flooded into my head. This man had no badge, no walkie-talkie. He was just a man in the quiet part of the building, holding my hand. He let go of my hand for a second to check his phone. It was the only opening I'd get. I didn't think, I just ran. I sprinted back the way we came, my heart hammering against my ribs. I dared one glance back. He was just standing there, watching me flee, and on his face was the faintest, most chilling hint of a smile. I burst back into the bright concourse, gasping. I found my brother still in line. He looked annoyed. "Where'd you go?" he asked. The words clogged in my throat. I just shook my head, terrified of getting him or myself in trouble. I stayed glued to his side for the rest of the game, which I don't remember at all. The car ride home was silent. I claimed I was exhausted, and my parents bought it. But as our car merged onto the dark highway, a deafening, prolonged honk shattered the quiet. A large truck swerved up beside us. In the driver's seat, illuminated by our interior lights, was him. There were other shapes in the cab with him. My dad rolled down his window and shouted, but the truck just paced us, the men inside staring with blank, unsettling intensity. I froze. The confession died on my lips. Why couldn't I speak? We got home. I went straight to bed, desperate for the day to be over. I fell into a heavy, troubled sleep. Then, in the deepest part of the night, a rhythmic flashing of light dragged me awake. A bright, deliberate beam was sweeping across my bedroom wall. I crawled to the window, my breath fogging the cold pane, and peeled back the curtain. Standing on our lawn, looking directly up at my second-story window, was the man from the arena. He was shining a flashlight right at me. I screamed. My parents raced in, then rushed outside to search. They found nothing. No footprints in the frost, no sign of anyone. They soothed me, convinced it was the headlights of a passing car playing tricks. But I knew. I had seen his face, clear as day. The next few days were a blur of anxious celebration. On New Year's Eve, we were gathered in the living room, the cat counting down to midnight. 5 minutes to go. The doorbell rang. My dad answered. I heard a man's voice, polite and muffled, and then my blood turned to ice. I knew that voice. I yanked on my mom's sleeve, frantically whispering, "It's him, the man from the game." She shushed me. My dad came back with a flyer for a lost dog. "Nice fellow," he said. "His cousin's dog got out. He's just trying to help." I was a child crying wolf in a world of reasonable adults. The ball dropped. Cheers erupted. I felt utterly alone in a room of my family. Life moved on, as it does. The sharp edges of the memory softened with time. I told myself it was a series of weird coincidences, my young mind weaving a story. Then, a year to the day, on the next New Year's Eve, I was in my room. A sharp tap, tap, tap came at my window. Not the door, my window. Heart in my throat, I approached. Taped to the outside of the glass was a small, soggy piece of notebook paper. The message, written in smeared ink, read, "This New Year, you'll meet me again." This time, my parents believed me enough to file a police report. Nothing ever came of it, but the pattern was set. For years, New Year's Eve became my personal vigil. I'd lock my windows, draw the blinds tight, and lie awake waiting for a tap that never came. I developed a sudden lasting aversion to basketball games, much to my family's confusion. I'm 16 now. A decade has passed. The rational part of my brain says it's over, but the scared 6-year-old inside me knows he has our address. He proved that. And sometimes, in the quiet of a winter night, I'll catch a flicker of light outside, and my whole body goes rigid. The most terrifying gifts aren't the ones you open, but the ones that find you when you're not looking. There's a big game coming up in early January. My friends are trying to get me to go. They say it's time to get over it. Part of me wants to reclaim that joy. But another part, a deeper part, wonders if walking back into that same arena, under those same blinding lights, would be like sending up a flare. Would he remember too? Some doors, once opened, can never be fully closed again. If this story got under your skin, do me a favor and give this video a like. It helps more people find these real stories here on Midnight Zephyr. Let me know in the comments what you would have done in my situation.
Christmas is supposed to be peaceful, but the man singing outside my window that night had a very different holiday in mind. My name is Leo, and the events I'm about to describe unfolded over the course of one deeply unsettling week last December. My partner, Maya, had traveled to be with her family for the holidays. Work commitments kept me behind. Our home is in a tranquil, wooded suburb of Connecticut. The properties are generous, with plenty of space between them. By the 23rd, nearly everyone on our cul-de-sac had departed to visit relatives, leaving the entire lane in a profound, almost eerie stillness. Initially, I welcomed the solitude. The plan was simple: rest, unwind, and enjoy the quiet luxury of an empty house. I'd watch movies, order takeout, and relish the silence. That sense of calm would shatter completely on my second night alone, replaced by a chilling dread I can still feel in my bones. It was early evening, maybe around 6. Darkness had fully claimed the day, and a soft, persistent snow had been dusting the world since afternoon. A pristine white layer blanketed the driveway and the pine trees in our yard. I was in the kitchen, attempting to prepare a simple meal, something far less impressive than Maya's usual culinary creations. For background noise more than entertainment, I switched on the television. The house felt too vast, too hollow without another soul in it. The cheerful commercials felt jarring against the deepening quiet. As I sat at the table to eat, an alien sound cut through the mundane atmosphere. It took my brain a long second to process it. It was singing, a low, tuneless vocalization coming from outside. I thumbed the remote, silencing the TV. In the new quiet, the sound clarified. It was a man's voice, gruff and off-key, attempting jingle bells. My first rational thought was of carolers, but this wasn't a cheerful choir. This was a single adult man. The melody wasn't joyful. It was monotonous, like a broken record played in the cold. I stood and moved toward our front foyer, the sound growing more distinct with each step. By the time I reached the door, it was unmistakably originating from just the other side of the wood. A tight knot of apprehension formed in my gut. I peered through the peephole, but its fisheye lens only showed a distorted blur of our porch light. Steeling myself, I turned the handle and opened the door a few inches. Standing under the harsh glow of the porch fixture was a man. He appeared to be in his late 30s. He wore a denim jacket, shockingly inadequate for the freezing weather, and no hat. His hair was damp from the snow. His eyes were fixed downward, locked on our welcome mat, as he continued his sluggish, discordant rendition of the holiday classic. He showed no sign of registering that the door had opened. I managed a weak, confused smile. Hello?" I said, my voice barely above a mutter. He gave no response, not a glance, not a pause in his singing. I wondered, briefly, if he had some cognitive difference, if he was lost or disoriented. The performance felt less like caroling and more like a trance. When he finally reached the end of the verse, he took a shallow, ragged breath. And then he started the exact same song again from the very beginning. This time, however, his gaze lifted, his eyes, glassy and distant, locked directly onto mine. The forced smile melted from my face. This wasn't right. The direct stare transformed the awkward situation into something palpably wrong. I stood there frozen for what felt like an age as he looped the song a third time. I checked my watch. Nearly 4 minutes had passed since I'd opened the door. "Okay, thank you," I said, my tone firm but flat. "Merry Christmas." I slowly pushed the door closed until the latch clicked. Through the wood, the singing continued, uninterrupted. I returned to the kitchen, but my appetite was gone. The pasta was cold, congealed. The voice was a constant, grating presence, seeping into the house. It wasn't loud, but it was pervasive, an auditory intrusion that made my skin prickle. Could he be mentally ill? Was there a caretaker nearby that I couldn't see? I parted the blinds and scanned the empty, snow-swept street. No cars, no people, just the faint glow of neighbors' holiday lights through the trees. He was alone, and he was on my property. The silence of being alone had just been violated by a terrible, repeating noise. The singing finally ceased after about 10 relentless minutes. The sudden vacuum of silence was almost as jarring as the noise itself. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Cautiously, I moved to the front window and shifted the curtain aside. He hadn't left. He had simply relocated. Now he stood at the very foot of our driveway, where the asphalt met the quiet road. He was perfectly still, facing the house, a dark silhouette against the white snow. He was no longer singing. He was just watching, waiting, a silent sentry in the falling snow. This was profoundly worse. The performance was bizarre, but this was a threat.
Anger and fear bubbled up together. I yanked the door open again, the cold air hitting me like a wall. "Hey!" I shouted. "You need to leave. This is private property." The figure didn't move a muscle. "I'm not asking. Get off my driveway or I'm calling the police." I slammed the door, my heart hammering against my ribs. From the window, I watched. For a full minute, he remained a statue. Then, with a slow, almost mechanical turn, he shuffled out of the pool of light and vanished into the shadowy gap between two houses across the street. Relief, warm and dizzying, washed over me. It was over. The threat had worked. I double-checked every lock, then decided to retreat upstairs for the night. I needed to put distance between myself and the front of the house. In my bedroom, I changed, tried to read, but the words swam on the page. Every creak of the settling house, every gust of wind made me flinch. After 20 anxious minutes, I convinced myself the encounter was done. That's when I heard it again, the same tuneless, dragging melody. Jingle bells. But the direction was wrong. It wasn't coming from the front. It was filtering up from below, through the floor. It was in my backyard. I scrambled out of bed and rushed to the back window. My blood turned to ice. There, standing in the middle of our snow-covered garden, was the man. His head was tilted back, his mouth open as he sang, his breath forming plumes in the frigid air. And he was staring directly up at my window. He had been waiting for me to appear. "Get out of here!" I roared, shoving the window sash up. "I am calling the police right now!" The singing stopped instantly. The abrupt silence was violent. For 3 heartbeats, he just stood there, his face an unreadable mask in the gloom. Then, His body coiled, and he exploded into motion. He didn't run away. He sprinted directly toward the back of my house, disappearing from my view beneath the eaves. What followed was a sound I will never forget. It wasn't a scream of fear or anger. It was a raw, guttural, animalistic roar of pure fury. It vibrated through the window pane and echoed around the backyard. Then came the impacts. Bang, bang, bang. He was throwing his body against the back kitchen door. The solid wood groaned in its frame. I felt the impacts through the floorboards. He wasn't just trying to get my attention anymore. He was trying to break in. My hands shook so badly I could barely dial. I got through to 911, my voice a frantic, high-pitched stammer. "A man is trying to break into my house. He's at the back door. Please hurry." The dispatcher kept me on the line. I grabbed the heavy metal flashlight from my nightstand, a pathetic weapon, and backed into my walk-in closet, pulling the door nearly shut. The operator's calm voice was a lifeline in the darkness as the horrific symphony of screams and battering continued below. The most terrifying sound isn't a ghost, it's a living person trying to get to you. And then it stopped. The silence that rushed in was thick and heavy, somehow more threatening than the noise. Had he given up? Had he gotten inside? I sat in the dark closet, the flashlight clenched in my sweat-slicked hand, listening to the ragged sound of my own breathing. I didn't move until I saw the pulsating blue and red lights painting my bedroom walls. Meeting the officers on my front walk, the cold air felt like freedom. 2 policemen, calm and professional, swept the perimeter with powerful beams. They found the deep, chaotic footprints in the backyard snow, documenting the path from where he'd stood singing to the door, and then leading off into the thick woods that border our property. The back door was dented and scraped, but the lock had held. Their assessment was frustratingly casual. "Probably someone having a mental health episode," one offered, shining his light into the trees. "Happens more around the holidays than you'd think. Doors are locked? You should be fine." They made a brief, perfunctory attempt to follow the trail, but turned back, citing the difficulty and the cold. Their lack of urgency made me feel insane. The visceral terror I'd experienced was being filed away as a minor nuisance. After their cruisers disappeared down the street, the house felt different. It was no longer my cozy sanctuary. It was a box that had been violated, its silence now pregnant with threat. I checked every lock twice, then a third time. I spent the rest of the night with every light on, jumping at shadows. I cut my solitary holiday short and drove to my sister's house first thing in the morning. I couldn't spend another hour there. The man never returned, at least not while I was home. The police never called with any update. Life, as it does, moved on, but the experience left a permanent mark. I don't enjoy deep silence anymore. I find myself checking the locks multiple times each night, a ritual I can't seem to break. And every December, when I hear jingle bells in a store or on the radio, I don't feel cheer. I feel a cold prickle on the back of my neck, and I'm instantly back at that window, looking down at a figure in the snow who wanted in. If this story unsettled you, if it made you double-check your own locks tonight, then do this channel a solid. Hit the like button, it genuinely helps me out, and consider subscribing to Midnight Zephyr for more tales from the darker corners of reality. We explore the stories that linger long after the lights go out.
Midnight Zephyr presents this story. Your feedback helps shape the next horror. What do you want to hear next? And subscribe so you don't miss the next night of nightmares. It was the fall of my 11th year when my family traded our suburban streets for the rustic allure of a harvest festival at Willowbrook Farm, nestled deep in the rolling hills of rural Vermont. My parents, seeking a break from the ordinary, had booked us into one of the farm's cozy guest barns converted into lodgings, complete with hayloft views over endless fields of corn and pumpkins. The place buzzed with autumn energy, tractors rumbling, laughter echoing from games, and the scent of spiced cider mingling with wood smoke. Surrounded by thick, whispering forests, it felt magical during daylight hours, but as twilight crept in, the shadows stretched long and unforgiving, turning the idyllic setting into something far more sinister. We pulled up just after lunch, and while Mom and Dad unpacked, I wandered off to explore. That's where I met Mia, a spirited 12-year-old with freckles and a vampire cape, whose family was staying in the adjacent stall-turned-cottage. She was bold and adventurous, dragging me into apple bobbing contests and a scavenger hunt that awarded chocolate bars wrapped in ghostly foil. As the sun dipped low, the farm's main event kicked off, a twilight corn maze lit by flickering lanterns, promising thrills and chills with actors hidden among the stalks to jump out as ghouls. But midway through the twisting paths, unease settled in. I glimpsed a figure at the periphery, not one of the costume staff, but a tall man in a weathered gray trench coat and wide-brimmed hat, his face obscured by dusk. He stood unnaturally still, hands clasped behind his back, eyes seeming to track our every move. Mia brushed it off as part of the fun, but I felt a chill unrelated to the cooling air. Evening brought a bonfire gathering with storytelling, where an elderly farmhand named Mr. Harlan shared tales of a long-lost wanderer said to haunt the woods, luring children with promises of hidden treasures. Intrigued, Mia and I later slipped away to investigate an abandoned silo on the property's edge, flashlight beams cutting through the night. Footsteps echoed behind us, deliberate and heavy. The man emerged from the gloom, his voice smooth yet chilling. "Lost your way, kids? I've got something special for brave explorers like you." Panic surged as he extended a gloved hand holding a shimmering locket, bait disguised as a prize. We bolted, but in a heart-pounding twist, he pursued with unnatural speed, whispering our names as if he'd been listening all day. Bursting back to the fire, we gasped out our story. Adults searched, but he melted into the forest. Unbeknownst to us, this was no random stranger. A subplot unfolded, revealing him as a disgraced former ranger with a vendetta against the farm's owner, tied to a recent string of unsolved vanishings in the area. The night escalated when we discovered a hidden cache in the silo, photos of kids, including one resembling Mia's missing cousin. Police arrived at dawn, but the man had fled, leaving a note hinting at deeper corruption on the farm itself. In an unexpected resolution, the haunter turned out to be an undercover investigator, exposing the real predator, Mr. Harlan, whose legends masked his crimes. Yet doubts lingered. Was the chase a setup, or had we narrowly escaped something worse? Suspense built with each revelation, drawing us into a web of deception that forever altered my view of festive shadows. The crisp October wind whipped through the valleys of Vermont as our old minivan chugged up the winding dirt road toward Willowbrook Farm. I was 11 that year, the kind of age where Halloween still held that electric mix of excitement and a tiny edge of real fear, the good kind, like when you know a jump scare is coming but can't help flinching anyway. My name's Lucas, and back then, I lived for these family outings. Mom worked as a teacher in our small town near Burlington, and Dad was a mechanic who fixed tractors just like the ones we'd soon see rumbling across the fields. They figured a weekend at the Harvest Festival would be a perfect escape from the usual door-to-door candy haul in our neighborhood. "Something authentic," Mom had said with a smile, flipping through the brochure that promised pumpkin carving, corn mazes, and bonfire tales under the stars. My little sister Ava, who was only 7, bounced in her booster seat, clutching her stuffed pumpkin toy. "Are there real ghosts there, Lucas?" she asked, her eyes wide behind her plastic witch hat. I rolled my eyes but grinned. "Maybe, but if there are, I'll protect you." Dad chuckled from the driver's seat, glancing in the rear view. "That's the spirit, kid. Just stick together and we'll have a blast." The farm emerged around a bend, its red barns glowing against the golden afternoon light. Fields stretched out like a patchwork quilt, dotted with orange pumpkins and tall corn stalks swaying gently. A wooden sign at the entrance read, "Willowbrook Harvest Festival, where autumn comes alive," with cartoon ghosts and hay bales illustrated below. It looked inviting, the kind of place where families made memories, We checked in at the main office, a cozy log building with a crackling fireplace and shelves lined with jars of homemade jam. The owner, Mrs. Elena Whitaker, a warm woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair tied in a ponytail, handed us keys to our converted guest barn. "Welcome, folks. Cottages are that way, number 4. Festival kicks off at 4 p.m. with games by the pond. Enjoy." Her smile was genuine, but there was a hint of weariness in her eyes, like she'd been running the place single-handedly for years. Dad thanked her, and we drove the short path to our spot. The cottage was actually an old horse stall, remodeled into a rustic suite, with bunk beds for Ava and me, a small kitchenette, and windows overlooking the forest that bordered the property. The air smelled of earth and hay, mixed with the faint sweetness of ripening apples from a nearby orchard. While Mom and Dad unpacked groceries, snacks, hot cocoa mix, and marshmallows for toasting, Ava tugged at my sleeve. "Can we go play now?" I nodded, grabbing my jacket. "Sure, but stay close." We stepped out into the bustling grounds. Kids darted everywhere, some already in costumes. Superheroes, princesses, monsters. Booths lined the main field, offering ring toss for prizes, face painting, and a station where you could decorate mini pumpkins with glitter and markers. The pond shimmered under the sun with ducks quacking lazily. I felt that buzz of freedom, the kind you get when you're away from home and anything seems possible. That's when I met Mia. She was at the apple bobbing tub, her head dunked in the water, emerging triumphant with a shiny red fruit clamped in her teeth. Water dripped from her chin as she laughed, her vampire cape soggy at the edges. She was 12, with curly brown hair and a smattering of freckles across her nose, and she looked like she owned the place. "Beat that," she challenged a group of younger kids. Spotting me watching, she tossed the apple my way. "Your turn, newbie." I caught it, grinning. "I'm Lucas. We're in Cottage 4. She wiped her face with her sleeve. "Mia, Cottage 3, right next door. My folks come here every year. Dad's obsessed with the cider press. Want to team up for the scavenger hunt? Winners get a giant candy basket." I agreed instantly. Ava tagged along at first, but got distracted by a puppet show near the barn. Mia and I dashed from clue to clue, find an oddly shaped pumpkin, collect 3 colored leaves, solve a riddle about harvest moons. We chatted as we went. Mia told me she lived in a nearby town, loved reading mystery books, and once built a treehouse that collapsed mid-construction. "Nearly broke my arm," she said with a shrug. "But hey, adventures, right?" I shared about my school's soccer team and how I wanted to be a detective when I grew up. The farm felt alive, with tractors pulling wagons of hay, laughter ringing out, and the occasional boo from hidden speakers playing spooky sounds. As the afternoon waned, the sun casting long shadows across the fields, we joined the line for the corn maze. It was the festival's highlight, a sprawling labyrinth of 8-foot stalks, lit by strings of orange lights and occasional torches. Mrs. Whitaker announced over a megaphone, "Enter if you dare. Ghosts and goblins await inside. First group out wins a prize." About 15 families piled in, including us. Mia and I led the way, twisting through narrow paths, giggling when actors in ragged clothes popped out with fake chainsaws or moaned like zombies. The air grew cooler, the stalks rustling like whispers. "This is awesome," Mia said, her flashlight beam dancing ahead. But then about a third of the way in, something shifted. We turned a corner into a dimmer section where the lights were spaced farther apart. I glanced to the side and froze. At the edge of the maze, just beyond the stalks, stood a man. He wasn't part of the act, that much was clear. No costume, just a long gray trench coat, boots caked in mud, and a wide-brimmed hat that shaded his face. His posture was rigid, hands clasped behind his back, as if he were a statue forgotten in the field. I couldn't see his eyes, but I felt them, piercing, focused on our group. A shiver ran down my spine, unrelated to the chill. "Mia, look," I whispered, nudging her. She peered over. Probably a worker taking a break. "Come on, the exit's this way." I tried to shake it off, but as we navigated deeper, I swore I heard extra rustling behind us, like someone paralleling our path just out of sight. We emerged victorious, claiming our candy basket, but the unease lingered. The man was gone when I looked back. Evening fell quickly, the sky turning a deep indigo. The bonfire roared to life in the central field, crackling flames sending sparks skyward. Families gathered around, roasting marshmallows and sharing stories. Mr. Harlan, an elderly farmhand with a bushy white beard and a limp from some old injury, sat on a log, pipe in hand. He was a fixture here, Mrs. Whitaker had said, having worked the land for decades. "Gather round, young ones," he called in a gravelly voice. "Time for a tale of the Willowbrook Wanderer." We settled in, Mia beside me, Ava on Mom's lap. Mr. Harlan's story wove of a drifter from the 1800s who roamed these woods, luring lost children with shiny trinkets, buttons, coins, lockets, promising hidden fortunes. But those who followed never returned, he intoned, his eyes gleaming in the firelight. They say his spirit still wanders, especially on nights like this. Gasps rippled through the crowd, but it was all in fun. Or so I thought. As the tale ended, I scanned the edges of the light. There he was again, the man from the maze, standing just beyond the fire's glow, near the tree line. His hat tilted slightly, and now I could make out a scar on his cheek, glinting faintly. He wasn't clapping or chatting, just watching. My heart thudded. "Mia, that's the guy," I muttered. She squinted. "Creepy. Maybe he's Harlan's helper or something." But he didn't move closer, and when a group laughed loudly, he slipped back into the shadows. The festival wound down around 8 p.m., with most families heading to their cottages. Ava was yawning, so Mom and Dad took her inside. "Don't stay out too late, Lucas," Dad warned. "Lights out by 9. Mia and I weren't ready to call it quits. "Hey, what about that silo Mr. Harlan mentioned?" she suggested, eyes sparkling with mischief. The old structure stood at the farm's far edge, a rusted tower said to be part of the Wanderer's legend, where he'd supposedly hidden his treasures. "Let's check it out. Quick adventure." I hesitated, remembering the man, but the thrill won out. We grabbed flashlights from our cottages and snuck along a gravel path skirting the fields, the bonfire's embers fading behind us. The night was quiet, save for crickets and the occasional hoot of an owl. The forest loomed dark and dense, branches like skeletal fingers. The silo appeared ahead, its metal sides weathered and vine-covered, door slightly ajar. "Cool," Mia whispered, pushing it open. Inside, dust motes danced in our beams, old crates, rusted tools, and a ladder leading up. We poked around, pretending to hunt for ghosts. "Boo!" I jumped out at her, and we dissolved into laughter. But then a snap, a twig breaking outside. We froze. Footsteps approached, slow, deliberate, crunching on leaves. "Probably an animal," Mia said, but her voice wavered. The door creaked wider, and there he stood. The man. Up close, he was taller than I'd thought, with rough stubble and eyes like cold steel under the hat's brim. A faint smile curled his lips. "Evening, young explorers. Out past bedtime?" His voice was smooth, almost friendly, but it sent ice through my veins. He stepped inside, blocking the exit. "I see you're interested in treasures. I've got one right here." From his coat pocket, he pulled a small silver locket, dangling it like a hypnotist's pendulum. It caught the flashlight glow, sparkling. "Belonged to someone special. Come take a look. There's more where that came from." Mia's face paled. We should go." But he took another step. "No rush. I watched you in the maze today. Brave kids like you deserve rewards." How did he know? Had he been following us all along? My mind raced. The Wanderer, the stories, the vanishings Harlan mentioned. Were they real? In a flash, I grabbed Mia's hand. "Run!" We darted past him, but his arm shot out, grazing her cape. She yelped as it tore, but we burst out, sprinting toward the lights. His footsteps thundered behind, heavy breaths echoing. "Wait, it's just a gift," We didn't stop until we reached the bonfire remnants where a few adults still lingered. Gasping, we spilled everything. The sightings, the chase, the locket. Mrs. Whitaker's face drained of color. That sounds like... No, it can't be. She called the others and Dad emerged from our cottage, flashlight in hand. What happened? We repeated the tale, Mia showing her torn cape as proof. Mr. Harlan joined the group, his limp more pronounced as he hobbled over. The Wanderer? Bah, just a story to scare folks. But his eyes darted nervously to the woods. Dad and a couple of other fathers grabbed lanterns and searched the silo path. They returned empty-handed. No one there, but we found this. Dad held up the locket, dropped in the grass. Inside was a faded photo of a child, maybe 10 years old, smiling innocently. Mrs. Whitaker gasped. That's from the old missing cases. Years ago, kids disappeared around here during festivals. Police thought it was a drifter. The group murmured. Someone phoned the local sheriff, who arrived within the hour. A stern woman named Deputy Reyes. She took our statements, examined the locket. We'll patrol the area. Stay inside tonight. Back in the cottage, doors bolted, I couldn't sleep. Ava snored softly, but every creak made me jump. Mom hugged me tight. It's over now. But was it? Mia texted from next door. Her family had a phone rule loosened for the night. That was crazy. Think he's still out there? I peered through the window at the dark forest. A shadow shifted. Or did it? Morning brought more questions. Deputy Reyes returned with news. The locket matched evidence from a cold case. A boy vanished 5 years prior. Fingerprints on it led to a suspect, a former farm worker named Elias Crow, Harlan's estranged brother who'd been spotted in the area recently. Harlan confessed under pressure. Elias was always odd, obsessed with the old legends. I thought he'd left town. But the twist came at noon. Searching the silo deeper, they found a hidden compartment. Notebooks filled with sketches of children, maps of the farm, and newspaper clippings about disappearances. Elias wasn't just a wanderer. He was mimicking the legend to cover his tracks. Yet, in an unexpected turn, one note read, "They're not safe. The real monster is closer." It pointed to Mrs. Whitaker's late husband, whose death was ruled accidental but now suspicious. Elias, it turned out, had been investigating quietly, using the locket as bait to draw out confessions. But his methods terrified us. Was he a hero or a villain? Police arrested him for trespassing and stalking, but the farm's dark history unraveled further. A subplot of buried secrets, including Harlan's involvement in covering up past incidents for insurance money. We packed up early, driving away as clouds gathered. I stared back at the fields, half expecting to see Elias's hat among the stalks. For months, nightmares plagued me. Footsteps, lockets, whispers. Mia and I stayed in touch. She said the festival shut down after that. The real horror wasn't the chase, it was realizing how close evil hides disguised as folklore or family. And every autumn since, when leaves crunch underfoot, I wonder if the Wanderer was ever truly a myth. The investigation dragged on, with Deputy Reyes uncovering more. Elias's notebooks revealed he'd lost his own son years ago, blaming the farm's curse. Driven mad, he'd returned to protect kids by scaring them away, but his obsession twisted into something darker. Harlan admitted to small crimes, fencing stolen goods, but denied the vanishings. Then, a breakthrough. Digging near the pond unearthed old relics, including a child's shoe from the cold case. Fingerprints implicated not Elias, but Mrs. Whitaker herself. She'd been silencing threats to her business. The festival was a front for something sinister, luring families while she dealt in black market antiques pilfered from graves. Elias escaped custody briefly, leaving a final message. I tried to warn them. Recaptured, he claimed innocence, but evidence mounted. Our family never returned to Willowbrook. Dad sold the minivan, as if to erase the memory. Ava outgrew her fear, but I didn't. At school, I'd scan crowds for gray coats. Mia moved away, but we video called, reliving the night with a mix of thrill and terror. We were heroes, she'd say. But were we? The resolution left loose ends, some kids still missing, cases reopened. The farm became a ghost town literally, with tourists now visiting for haunted tours. Years later, as an adult, I researched it all. Articles detailed the scandal. Whitaker arrested, Harlan fined, Elias institutionalized. The unexpected outcome? Elias's warnings led to justice, but at what cost? He died in care, insisting the true wanderer roamed free. It shook me. Predators aren't always strangers. Sometimes they're the ones smiling at check-in. That Halloween taught me vigilance, the fragility of trust. And in quiet moments, I hear footsteps in the wind, wondering if the cycle continues. Boy flees stalker and haunted farm, you won't believe the twist. Midnight Zephyr presents this story. Your feedback helps shape the next horror. What do you want to hear next? And subscribe so you don't miss the next night of nightmares. In the misty coastal town of Harbor's Edge, Washington, during the early 2000s, two sisters, older teen Riley and her younger sibling Jordan, navigate a daily trek home from school through a dense, fog-shrouded redwood forest that hugs the rugged Pacific shoreline. Dropped off at a remote bus stop near an old logging road, they must hike 2 miles along winding trails lined with towering evergreens, crashing waves audible in the distance, to reach their family's weathered cabin overlooking the sea. Riley, at 16, is the protective one, grappling with the recent upheaval of their parents' bitter separation. Their dad left for the city, leaving their mom to struggle with odd jobs and whispers of local folklore about the driftwalkers, ethereal beings said to lure lost souls into the mist. Jordan, 13 and imaginative, clings to stories of adventure to escape the tension at home, often inventing games during their walks to distract from the loneliness. The chapter opens with a crisp autumn afternoon as the sisters disembark the bus, the air thick with the scent of pine and salt water. They banter lightly, Jordan teasing Riley about a crush at school. But the mood shifts when they veer onto a lesser-used path to avoid a washed-out bridge from recent storms. Deeper in, an unnatural whisper echoes through the trees. Not wind, but fragmented voices murmuring indecipherable words, carrying a chill that seeps into their bones. A strange odor follows, like damp earth mixed with rusted iron, evoking buried secrets. They dismiss it as echoes from the ocean caves below. But tension builds as shadows flit between trunks, elongated forms that seem to mimic their steps. Introducing a new character, they stumble upon Elias, an eccentric elderly fisherman from town who's foraging for mushrooms. He warns them of old legends about the driftwalkers, shape-shifting guardians of forgotten shipwrecks, drawn to fractured families like theirs. Skeptical but unnerved, the sisters press on, but the whispers grow personal. Muttering fragments of their parents' arguments, Riley's hidden guilt over a family secret, she accidentally revealed Dad's affair, accelerating the split, and Jordan's fears of abandonment. A twist emerges. One shadow detaches, revealing a translucent figure with limbs like twisted kelp, eyes like flickering lantern light, beckoning them toward a hidden cliffside grotto. Pacing accelerates as pursuit begins. The sisters flee, but Jordan twists an ankle in a root snare, forcing Riley to carry her. They hide in an abandoned logger's shack, where a subplot unfolds. Riley confesses her role in the family's breakdown, forging deeper sibling bonds amid terror. New scenes add immersion. Flashbacks to happier beachcombing days, contrasted with current dread. Atmospheric details like fog curling like fingers. Distant foghorn wails mimicking the whispers. Another twist. Elias reappears, but he's not what he seems. Perhaps a driftwalker in disguise or a protector testing their resolve. The sequence builds suspense through escalating encounters. The entities toy with them, separating the sisters briefly, leading to a heart-pounding reunion. An unexpected outcome. Instead of mere escape, they confront one entity in the grotto, discovering it's tied to a real shipwreck artifact their dad once found and hid, symbolizing unresolved family pain. The chapter ends on a cliffhanger. As they burst onto the beach near home, a final whisper reveals the entities aren't fleeing. They're following, embedding a seed of doubt that this nightmare might invade their safe haven, leaving viewers eager for resolution while preserving the eerie tone of lingering mystery and the theme of facing inner demons through external horrors. The bus rattled to a stop at the edge of Harbor's Edge, where the paved road gave way to a gravel pullout flanked by ancient redwoods. It was one of those October days in 2003, when the Pacific Northwest sun teased you with brief warmth before the fog rolled in like an uninvited guest. Riley Thompson, 16 and already carrying the weight of too many secrets, hoisted her backpack over one shoulder and glanced back at her younger sister Jordan. "Come on, Slowpoke. Mom's probably got that canned soup on the stove by now, exciting times." Jordan, 13 and full of that boundless energy that Riley envied, hopped down the steps with a grin. Her ponytail bounced as she adjusted her bag, stuffed with dog-eared fantasy novels from the school library. "Hey, at least it's not ramen again. And who knows, maybe we'll find some cool driftwood today. I could make a sword out of it, like in that book about the lost warriors." Riley rolled her eyes, but a small smile tugged at her lips. These walks home had become their ritual ever since Dad packed up and left for Seattle 6 months ago, chasing some job that promised more than their mom's shifts at the local diner could. The bus driver, old Mr. Harlan, waved them off with a gruff, "Stay on the path, girls. Fog's coming in thick." The engine grumbled as the bus pulled away, leaving them alone with the whisper of wind through the pines and the distant roar of waves crashing against the cliffs below. They started down the familiar trail, a narrow dirt path that wound through the forest for about 2 miles before spilling out near their cabin on the bluffs. It wasn't the shortest route. There was a quicker way along the old highway shoulder, but it meant dodging logging trucks, and Mom had drilled into them to avoid it after a close call last spring. Besides, Jordan loved the woods. She turned every hike into an adventure, pointing out twisted roots that looked like dragon claws or mushrooms sprouting like fairy houses. As they walked, the conversation flowed easily at first. Jordan chattered about her day, how she'd aced a math quiz but bombed the spelling bee because who even uses quintessential in real life? Riley listened, nodding along, but her mind wandered to the letter hidden in her backpack. It was from Dad, slipped into the mail without Mom knowing. He'd written about missing them, about how the city lights couldn't replace the stars over the ocean, but Riley hadn't shown it to anyone. Not yet. She felt a pang of guilt twist in her gut. It was her fault he'd left, wasn't it? She'd overheard the fight, the one about his late nights at the bar with that woman from the cannery, and in a moment of anger, she'd blurted it out to Mom. Now the family was shattered, and Jordan's bright eyes hid the hurt Riley saw in quiet moments. "Earth to Riley," Jordan teased, nudging her elbow. "You're doing that zoned-out thing again, thinking about Jake from history class?" Riley flushed, shoving her sister playfully. "Shut up, Jake's just whatever." "No, I was thinking we should take the lower path today. The bridge up top is still out from that storm last week, remember? Mom said the rangers haven't fixed it yet." Jordan shrugged. "Fine by me. The lower path's got that cool spot by the stream where we saw those otters last time. Race you to the fork?" They picked up the pace, laughter echoing off the trees. The forest here was dense, with ferns carpeting the ground and moss draping branches like green veils. Sunlight filtered through in dappled patches, but as they descended toward the stream, the air grew cooler, heavier with moisture. The scent of pine mingled with the salty tang of the sea, carried up from the beaches below the cliffs. It was about 15 minutes in when the first oddity crept in. A faint murmur like voices carried on the breeze, but too low to make out words. Riley paused, tilting her head. "You hear that? Sounds like people talking?" Jordan stopped too, her brow furrowing. Maybe hikers or echoes from the beach? The waves do weird things sometimes. They shrugged it off and kept going, crossing the stream on a makeshift log bridge Jordan balanced across like a gymnast. On the other side, the path narrowed, hugging the base of a steep hillside dotted with fallen logs. That's when the smell hit, a strange earthy odor mixed with something sharper like rusted metal or old blood. It wasn't overpowering, but it clung to the back of Riley's throat, making her nose wrinkle. "Ooh, what is that?" Jordan pinched her nose. "Smells like when Mom forgets the wet laundry in the washer." Riley scanned the underbrush. "Maybe a dead animal? Let's just keep moving." We're halfway there. But as they pressed on, the murmurs returned. Clearer now. Not words exactly, but fragments, hushed syllables that rose and fell like a conversation just out of reach. The fog was thickening, swirling around their ankles like curious cats. Riley felt a prickle on the back of her neck, the kind you get when you think someone's watching. She glanced over her shoulder, but saw only trees and mist. Up ahead, the path curved around a massive redwood stump, and that's where they nearly collided with him. An old man in a weathered rain slicker, bent over with a basket in hand, picking at the forest floor. He straightened slowly, his face creased like driftwood, eyes sharp under bushy brows. "Whoa, sorry," Riley said, stepping back. "Didn't see you there." The man, Elias, as he'd introduce himself, chuckled, a raspy sound. "No harm, young ones. Just foraging for chanterelles. Name's Elias Crow. Live down by the harbor. You two the Thompson girls? Heard about your pa leaving, tough break." Jordan's eyes widened. "How'd you know our name?" Elias tapped his temple. "Small town. Word travels. But mind the woods today. Fog's got a way of stirring up old tales. Ever hear of the Driftwalkers?" Riley crossed her arms, skeptical. "The what?" "Local legend," Elias said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Spirits from the wrecks out there in the bay, ships gone down in storms, souls that didn't make it to shore. They wander the mist, whispering to the lost, drawn to folks with heavy hearts like a family's breaking apart. They mimic voices, lure you off the path to the cliffs. Seen 'em myself once back in '78. Tall things, limbs like seaweed, eyes glowing like ship lanterns." Jordan shivered but grinned. "Cool story, like ghosts?" "Something like," Elias replied, "but real enough to drag you under if you're not careful. Stick to the light, girls, and if you hear whispers, run." He nodded farewell and shuffled off into the fog, leaving the sisters exchanging glances. "That was weird," Jordan said. "Think he's for real?" Riley forced a laugh. "Probably just an old fisherman spinning yarns. Come on, let's get home before Mom worries." But as they continued, the murmurs grew insistent. Now they sounded personal, snatches of arguments Riley recognized. "You never listen. It's over." Echoes of her parents' last fight. Her heart pounded. How could that be? Jordan heard it too, her face paling. "Riley? That sounds like Dad." "Impossible," Riley muttered, quickening her step. The smell intensified like damp soil after rain mixed with corroded copper. Shadows danced in her peripheral vision, elongated shapes slipping between trees, keeping pace. Then a figure emerged from the mist ahead, blocking the path. Translucent skin like fogged glass, limbs twisted and long as kelp strands, eyes flickering with an inner light. It tilted its head, whispering Riley's name in her mother's voice, laced with accusation. "You ruined everything." Jordan gasped. "What is that?" "Run!" Riley yelled, grabbing her sister's hand. They bolted, the entity, a driftwalker, giving chase with unnatural grace, its whispers multiplying as more shapes joined from the woods. Branches whipped at their faces, the path turning treacherous. Jordan stumbled on a root, crying out as her ankle twisted. "It hurts!" Riley hauled her up, half carrying her. "We can't stop. There's an old shack up ahead, the logger's place. We can hide there." Panting, they reached the dilapidated structure, its boards creaking underfoot. Inside, amid dust and rusted tools, Riley barricaded the door with a broken bench. The whispers circled outside, probing, taunting with fragments of Riley's guilt. "You told her. You broke us." Tears stung Riley's eyes as she held Jordan close. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "About Dad. It was me. I overheard and told Mom. I thought it'd fix things, but it made everything worse." Jordan's eyes widened in shock, then softened. "Riley, why didn't you say, 'We're in this together'? But those things, they're using it against us." A new twist hammered at the door, Elias's voice but distorted. "Let me in, girls, I can help." Was he one of them, or trapped too? The banging intensified, the shack shaking. Riley spotted a loose floorboard, prying it up to reveal an old journal. Entries about a shipwreck in 1920, a cursed artifact washed ashore. Their dad had mentioned finding something similar years ago, a locket he hid in the cabin attic. Could that be the link? With renewed determination, Riley helped Jordan to a back window. We make for the grotto below. It's steep, but we can slide down to the beach. They escaped just as the door splintered, fleeing into the fog. The driftwalkers pursued, their forms multiplying, whispers turning to wails. At the grotto, a hidden cave mouth in the cliffside, Riley turned, clutching a sharp rock. "Stay back!" One entity lunged, but Jordan threw a handful of sand, momentarily dispersing it like smoke. Inside the grotto, glowing fungi illuminated walls etched with old carvings, symbols of lost souls. At the center, a pedestal held a tarnished locket, the same one Dad had described. Riley opened it, revealing a faded photo of a family from the wreck. The whispers peaked. "Return us, or join us, or join." In a desperate act, Riley hurled the locket into the sea churning below. The entities howled, swirling into a vortex before fading. But as the sisters climbed out, battered and breathless, emerging onto the beach near home, a final whisper echoed on the wind. "We're not gone. We're waiting." The fog lifted slightly, revealing their cabin lights in the distance. But Riley felt eyes on them still, a chill that promised this wasn't over. What if the driftwalkers had followed? What if they'd brought something back with them? Midnight Zephyr presents True Story. And your feedback helps shape the next horror. What do you want to hear next? And subscribe so you don't miss the next night of nightmares. The story follows Alex, a 28-year-old graphic designer from the bustling city of Seattle, who agrees to house sit for his longtime college friend, Sarah, while she's away on a week-long photography retreat in the mountains. To make it original, the setting shifts to Sarah's quaint fog-shrouded bungalow, perched on the rugged coastline of Oregon, surrounded by dense pine forests and crashing waves below steep cliffs, a place known locally for its eerie isolation and whispered tales of shipwrecks and lost souls. Alex, recently laid off and dealing with the emotional fallout of a messy divorce, sees this as a chance to recharge, focus on freelance projects, and bond with Sarah's perceptive border collie Luna, a sharp, loyal dog trained for search and rescue in her younger days, but now retired and attuned to subtle disturbances interweaving flashbacks to Alex's past traumas with escalating present-day events, building suspense through layered revelations. It begins innocently. Alex arrives at dusk, unpacks in the cozy living room overlooking the sea, and sets up his workstation in the attic loft, where Luna curls up nearby. As night falls, Luna's behavior turns odd. She whines softly at the fogged windows, her ears twitching toward unseen sounds from the cliffs below. Dismissing it as adjustment to a new person, Alex takes her for a twilight stroll along the narrow beach path, but Luna freezes midway, hackles raised, staring into the misty woods where twisted branches resemble grasping hands. A new subplot introduces a mysterious neighbor, elderly widow Mrs. Eleanor Vance, who drops by with homemade pie and cryptic warnings about wanderers drawn to the coast's loneliness, hinting at a recent string of unsolved break-ins tied to a shadowy figure locals call the Cliff Ghost, a rumored vagrant or something more sinister. Tension ramps up as Alex works late into the night, hearing faint scratching at the doors and glimpsing fleeting shadows in the peripheral vision. A twist unfolds when he discovers an old journal hidden in the bungalow's basement, belonging to Sarah's late uncle, detailing paranoid entries about being watched during stormy nights, mirroring Alex's growing paranoia. Motivations shift. Unlike the original's random intruder, here the antagonist is revealed as a former colleague of Sarah's, driven by an obsessive grudge over a stolen photo credit that ruined his career, now stalking the property to retrieve evidence he believes is hidden there. Alex's calls to Sarah go unanswered due to poor signal, forcing him to rely on Luna's instincts. Alex Thompson pulled his weathered SUV into the gravel driveway of Sarah's bungalow, just as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the Oregon coast in hues of bruised purple and fading orange. The air was thick with the scent of salt and pine, carried on a brisk wind that whistled through the tall evergreens encircling the property like silent sentinels. He'd driven the 4 hours from Seattle in one go, his mind a whirlwind of recent misfortunes. The pink slip from his graphic design firm still fresh in his glove compartment, the divorce papers signed barely a month ago. Sarah, his old college buddy from art school, had practically begged him to house sit while she chased waterfalls and autumn foliage on her photography retreat. "It's perfect for you, Alex," she'd said over the phone, her voice bubbly as always. "Quiet, inspiring, and Luna will keep you company. She's a dream, no trouble at all." He grabbed his duffel bag and laptop case from the back seat, slinging them over his shoulder as he approached the front door. The bungalow was charming in a rustic way, with weathered cedar siding and a wraparound porch that overlooked the jagged cliffs dropping to the Pacific below. Waves crashed rhythmically in the distance, a soothing soundtrack that Alex hoped would drown out the noise in his head. He fumbled with the key Sarah had mailed him, pushing the door open to a warm glow from the living room lamp she'd left on. "Luna? Here, girl," he called softly, stepping inside. The border collie appeared from the kitchen, her black and white fur sleek and her intelligent brown eyes assessing him with a tilt of her head. She was about 8 years old now, retired from her days assisting in local search and rescue operations. But Sarah swore she still had that uncanny knack for sensing things others missed. Luna trotted over, sniffing his jeans before giving a tentative wag of her tail. Alex knelt down, scratching behind her ears. "Good girl. We're gonna have a fun week, huh?" The house was cozy, with exposed beam ceilings and shelves lined with Sarah's photography books and knickknacks from her travels. A carved wooden mask from Bali, a collection of sea glass in a jar. Alex dropped his bags in the guest room downstairs, a small space with a twin bed and a window facing the forest. But Sarah had suggested he work in the attic loft for the best views, so he headed up the narrow staircase, Luna padding behind him. The loft was spacious, with a slanted roof, a sturdy oak desk, and a large picture window framing the darkening ocean. He set up his laptop, plugging in the charger and arranging his sketch pad and stylus nearby. Freelance gigs were trickling in, a logo redesign here, a website banner there, but he needed focus to rebuild his portfolio. As he booted up his computer, Luna settled into a plush dog bed in the corner, her eyes half closed but ears perked. Alex dove into work, editing a series of digital illustrations for a client's children's book. The story was about a lost adventurer in an enchanted forest, which felt ironically fitting given the pines swaying outside. Hours slipped by, broken only by the occasional sip of coffee from the thermos he'd brought. Around 8 p.m., his stomach growled, prompting him to head downstairs to raid the fridge. Sarah had stocked it well. Fresh salmon, veggies, and a note on the counter. "Help yourself. Walk Luna before dark if you can. Trail starts out back. XOS. Sounds good," Alex muttered, prepping a quick sandwich. Luna watched him intently, her tail thumping when he grabbed her leash from the hook by the back door. The sun had fully set now, but a half moon provided enough light to illuminate the path. They stepped out into the cool evening, the fog rolling in from the sea like a living entity, muting sounds and blurring edges. The trail wound through the backyard, descending gently toward the beach below the cliffs. It was a popular spot for locals during the day, but at night it felt deserted. The only noise, the distant roar of waves and the crunch of gravel underfoot. Luna led the way eagerly at first, her nose to the ground sniffing at ferns and driftwood. Alex breathed deeply, feeling the tension from the drive ease. "This is what I needed, girl. Fresh start." But about 10 minutes in, as they approached a bend where the path hugged the cliff edge, Luna stopped abruptly. Her body tensed, hackles rising along her spine. She let out a low whine, staring into the misty underbrush to their left. "What's up, Luna?" Alex tugged gently on the leash, but she didn't budge. Her gaze was fixed on something in the fog, perhaps a rustle of leaves or a shadow. He strained his eyes, seeing nothing but swirling vapor and twisted branches. Probably just a rabbit or something. Still, a chill crept up his neck, the kind that comes from being watched. He remembered Sarah mentioning the area's wildlife, deer, foxes, even the occasional coyote. But Luna's reaction felt different, more vigilant. After a moment, he coaxed her forward, but she kept glancing back, her pace hurried as if eager to return home. Back inside, Alex locked the door and shook off the unease. "You're just spooked by the fog, huh?" he said to Luna, who stuck close to his side as he returned to the loft. He worked another hour, but concentration waned. Luna, usually relaxed, kept lifting her head, ears twitching toward the window. At one point, she stood up, padding to the glass and pressing her nose against it, a soft growl rumbling in her throat. Alex paused his music, listening. Nothing but the wind. "Okay, that's enough for tonight." He shut down his laptop and headed downstairs to unwind. The living room had a comfortable couch and a small TV. He flipped on a nature documentary, sinking into the cushions with Luna at his feet. But even there, she seemed restless, her eyes darting to the windows every few minutes. Alex texted Sarah, "All good here. Luna's a bit jumpy tonight. Everything okay on your end?" Her reply came quickly. "She's probably missing me, or sensing the storm coming in. Forecast says fog and rain all week. Sweet dreams." "Storm?" Alex glanced outside. The fog had thickened, obscuring the cliffs entirely. He double-checked the locks before bed, a habit from city living, then retired to the guest room. Luna hopped onto the foot of the bed without invitation, curling up with a sigh. Sleep came fitfully, interrupted by dreams of his ex-wife, Carla, accusing him of neglect during their marriage. In the dream, she morphed into a shadowy figure, lurking outside the window, tapping on the glass. He woke around 2 a.m. to Luna's low growl. The room was pitch black, the fog pressing against the panes like a blanket. "What is it?" he whispered, sitting up. Luna was rigid, staring at the door. Then, a faint scratch, barely audible, like nails on wood, echoed from downstairs. Alex's heart pounded. Burglars? Animals? He grabbed his phone, activating the flashlight, and crept to the hallway. Luna followed, her body low and alert. The scratching stopped as they descended. In the kitchen, everything looked normal, the door locked, windows secure. But when he shone the light on the back door, he noticed the latch was loose, jiggling slightly when touched. "Sarah said this was fine," he murmured, testing it. It held, but barely. Unease settled in his gut. Was someone trying to get in? Or was it just the wind? The next morning, Alex shook off the night terrors with strong coffee. The fog had lifted slightly, revealing a gray sky and choppy seas. He took Luna for another walk, this time in daylight, the path less intimidating with birds chirping overhead. They made it to the beach where waves lapped at pebble-strewn sand. Luna chased a seagull briefly, seeming her normal self. "See? Nothing to worry about," Alex told her, tossing a stick. On the way back, a figure emerged from the neighboring property, an elderly woman with silver hair tied in a bun, carrying a covered dish. "Hello there. You must be Sarah's friend," she called, waving. "I'm Eleanor Vance, next door." Alex smiled, introducing himself and Luna, who wagged her tail politely. Mrs. Vance handed over the dish, an apple pie, still warm. "Thought you might like some home cooking. This place can feel lonely, especially with the fog." "Thanks, that's kind." Sarah mentioned the area's beautiful but isolated. Mrs. Vance's eyes twinkled with a mix of warmth and something sharper. "Oh, it is. But mind the cliffs. Folks call them the Whispering Edges, old legends about shipwreck survivors wandering up from the wrecks, lost and desperate. And lately, some break-ins. They say it's the cliff ghost, a drifter preying on empty houses. Keep your doors locked, young man." Alex chuckled nervously. "Sounds like a ghost story to scare tourists." "Perhaps," she said, her expression serious. "But I've seen shadows myself, just be careful." She patted Luna. "Good dog you have there. Animals know things we don't." The conversation lingered in Alex's mind as he returned to work. The pie was delicious, a sweet contrast to his growing anxiety. He dove into designs, creating moody graphics inspired by the coast, swirling fog, silhouetted cliffs. Luna napped nearby, but around noon she perked up again, whining at the window. Alex looked out, seeing only mist. "You're making me paranoid, girl." To clear his head, he drove into the nearby village, a quaint cluster of shops and cafes along the harbor. At the local coffee spot, the Salty Brew, he ordered a latte and struck up a chat with the barista Jamie, a friendly guy in his mid-20s with tattoos peeking from his sleeves. "New in town?" Jamie asked, foaming the milk. "Just house-sitting for a friend. Nice place, but the fog's intense." Jamie nodded. "Yeah, it rolls in thick this time of year. Heard about the disappearances? Couple hikers went missing last month near the cliffs. Cops say they fell, but locals think otherwise. Maybe tied to those burglaries." "Burglaries?" Alex echoed, recalling Mrs. Vance's words. "Yep, isolated homes targeted. Nothing big stolen, just creepy, like someone watching. Stay safe out there." The drive back felt longer, the fog denser. Alex parked and entered the bungalow, Luna greeting him with enthusiastic jumps. He settled in the loft, but focus eluded him. Instead, he explored the house, discovering the basement door behind a pantry shelf. Curiosity piqued. He descended the creaky stairs, flashlight in hand. The space was cluttered with boxes of Sarah's old gear, cameras, tripods, and a dusty trunk labeled Uncle Ted. Inside the trunk, amid faded photos, was a leather-bound journal. Alex flipped it open, scanning entries from years ago. Night of the storm, heard footsteps on the porch. Thought it was the wind, but the dog barked mad. Something's out there, watching. Chills ran down his spine. Uncle Ted, Sarah's relative who'd owned the place before her, had died mysteriously. A fall from the cliffs, ruled accidental. But the journal suggested paranoia, mentions of the Watcher haunting the property. Luna, who'd followed him down, growled suddenly, staring at the small basement window high on the wall. Alex looked up. Outside, through the grime, a shadow shifted. Or did it? He blinked, and it was gone. "Just my imagination," he muttered, but his pulse raced. That evening, as rain pattered against the roof, Alex cooked the salmon, sharing bits with Luna. He tried calling Sarah, but the signal dropped. Storm interference, probably. Instead, he texted Jamie. "Hey, grab that coffee. Thanks for the chat. Any more on those burglaries?" Jamie's reply. "Nothing official, but rumor is it's an ex-local with a grudge. Be vigilant. Vigilant." The word echoed as night fell. Alex worked late, the loft illuminated by his screen's glow. Luna paced, her nails clicking on the wood. Then, around 11 p.m., the power flickered and died, plunging the house into darkness. "Great," Alex groaned, grabbing his phone. The backup generator was in the shed outside, but with the rain pouring, he hesitated. Using the flashlight, he navigated downstairs, Luna close behind. At the back door, he paused. The loose latch from last night now seemed suspicious. Had someone tampered with it? He opened it cautiously, rain lashing his face, and dashed to the shed. Fumbling with the generator, he got it humming, lights buzzing back on. Back inside, dripping wet, he toweled off. But Luna was barking now, frantic at the living room window. Alex approached, peering out. In the rain-smeared glass, reflected by the porch light, he saw a figure, tall, hooded, standing at the edge of the property, staring back. His blood froze. The figure turned and vanished into the fog. Heart-hammering, Alex dialed 911. "There's someone outside my house," he whispered urgently. The operator promised a patrol car, but with the storm it might take time. While waiting, he barricaded the doors with chairs, Luna growling beside him. He grabbed a fireplace poker for protection, mind racing. Was this the cliff ghost, or something more personal? The journal's words haunted him. "The Watcher knows your secrets." Sirens approached after what felt like eternity. 2 officers searched the grounds, flashlights cutting through the rain. "No sign of anyone," the lead cop said, a burly man named Officer Reyes. "Could have been a neighbor or animal, but we'll keep an eye out. Lock up tight." Alex nodded, but doubt gnawed. As the cops left, he noticed the basement door ajar. Had he left it open? Descending again, he found the journal disturbed, pages flipped to an entry about hidden evidence in the walls. What evidence? Upstairs, settling uneasily, Alex's phone buzzed. An unknown number. The message, "You shouldn't be here." His skin crawled. Luna whined, pressing against him. The night dragged on, sleep evading him. Dawn brought no relief. The fog persisted and Luna's vigilance intensified. Alex decided to investigate further, starting with the village library for local history. But as he prepared to leave, a knock at the door startled him. It was Mrs. Vance, her face pale. "I saw lights last night. Everything all right?" "Fine," Alex lied, not wanting to alarm her. But she leaned in. "Be careful. The cliff ghost isn't just a story. My husband saw him before he vanished." Vanished? Alex's mind reeled. The day unfolded with more discoveries. He found a loose floorboard in the loft, hiding a small box with photos of a man arguing with Sarah's uncle. Who was he? A search on his laptop revealed a name. Marcus Hale, a former photographer who'd accused Ted of stealing his work, ruining his career. Hale had disappeared years ago, presumed dead. Subplot weaving in, Alex messaged Jamie for a meetup at the cafe. Over coffee, Jamie shared, "Hale? Yeah, old scandal. He vowed revenge on Ted's family. Some say he's still around, living off-grid." The pieces clicked. The Watcher, the Grudge. Was Hale the intruder? Motivation shifted from random threat to targeted vendetta. But why now? With Sarah away, the house vulnerable. Returning home, Alex reinforced the doors, installing a temporary chain lock. Luna seemed calmer, but as evening fell, the scratching returned, louder, from the attic. Climbing up, he found the window unlatched, rain pooling on the sill. Someone had been inside. Panic rising, he called Sarah again, finally connecting. "Alex, what's wrong?" "Someone's trying to get in, the locks are tampered, and I found your uncle's journal. Mentions a Marcus Hale." Silence. Then, oh God, Hale was obsessed. He thought Uncle hid proof of the theft here. "I thought it was over." "Why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't want to scare you. Stay safe, I'm coming back early." But the line cut as thunder boomed. Alone again, Alex heard footsteps on the porch. Luna barked ferociously, lunging at the door. Through the peephole, he saw two figures, one hooded, the other masked, prying at the lock. "Get away!" Alex yelled, grabbing the poker. The door rattled but held. Luna's snarls intensified and one intruder cursed, backing off. They fled into the night, but not before dropping something, a photo of Sarah marked with an X. Alex slumped against the wall, breathing heavy. The threat was real and bigger than one man. Who was the accomplice? As rain pounded, he heard distant footsteps returning, echoing in the fog. Whatever secrets the bungalow held, they were far from over, and the night was just beginning.